of the community for giving many views and suggestions for this policy address. This shows that you all care about Hong Kong, support the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, Hong Kong SAR government in enhancing its governance, and are willing to offer advice with the aim of building a better Hong Kong, which is our home. In preparing for this year's policy address, I deeply felt that I was charged with a heavy responsibility. In the past year or so, Hong Kong has experienced multiple blows which are unprecedented. The social unrest arising from the opposition to the proposed legislative amendments to the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance and other anti-government acts, the shrinking economy and rising unemployment rate caused by the coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 epidemic, the exit and the danger of national security due to interference by external forces, all these have seriously undermined the social stability of the Hong Kong SAR, impeded its economic development and tarnished its international image, and for which our society has paid a high price. Under such circumstances, the worries and anxieties of the people and their loss of confidence in the future are entirely understandable. Naturally, they will expect the Hong Kong SAR government to do more and to do better. As such, the primary objective of this policy address is to look at ways to get Hong Kong out of the impasse delivered at a meeting celebrating the 20th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland and the inaugural ceremony of the fifth term government of the Hong Kong SAR held on the 1st of July 2017, President Xi Jinping pointed out that the implementation of one country, two systems entailed an evolving process, and that Hong Kong had encountered some new circumstances and issues in the process. He mentioned that the continued successful implementation of one country, two systems in Hong Kong hinged on four imperatives. Namely, it was imperative to have a correct understanding of the relationship between one country and two systems. It was imperative to always act in accordance with the Constitution of the People's Republic of China and the basic law of the Hong Kong SAR of the People's Republic of China. It was imperative to always focus on development as the top priority, and it was imperative to always maintain a harmonious and stable social environment. The policy address that I delivered today seeks to restore Hong Kong's constitutional order, consolidate and enhance Hong Kong's strengths, and diversify its economic development, and build on our past efforts to continue to improve people's well-being with a view to resolving our immediate and long-term social problems. I wish to receive support from the Legislative Council and the community. Since my delivery of the 2019 policy address, Hong Kong has been facing severe and unprecedented challenges in the past year. The COVID-19 outbreak, coupled with social unrest in the second half of last year, has taken a toll on our commercial activities. The local economy has experienced a rapid downturn, with a continual rise in the unemployment rate and the various sectors badly hit. Although the promulgation of the law of the People's Republic of China on safeguarding national security in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, or the National Security Law, on the 30th of June this year has restored stability in our society, the road to economic recovery is still fraught with difficulties. On the other hand, we have seen a quick rebound in the economy of our country as a result of vigorous efforts in putting the epidemic under control. Said to be the only major economy to record growth in 2020, the mainland has put forward a new development pattern of domestic and international dual circulation. While benefiting from its proximity to the mainland and the central government's long-standing support under the one country, two systems principle, Hong Kong's economic development will be given new impetus. It can continue to capitalize on the strengths to serve the country's needs with proactive participation in the domestic and international dual circulation, as well as better integration into the overall national development. In light of this development, I announced early last month the postponement of the delivery of this year's policy address to allow more time for discussion with the relevant central authorities as well as the Guangdong provincial government on policy initiatives that will support Hong Kong's development and enhance the community's confidence in the future. I led the government delegation to Beijing, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen from the 3rd to the 7th of November for in-depth exchanges with the relevant mainland authorities and received very positive feedback. At our meeting with Mr. Han Zheng, Vice Premier of the State Council, he remarked that, quote, the central government will fully support whatever measure that is conducive to maintaining the long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong, improving the well-being of Hong Kong people, and promoting greater integration of Hong Kong into the overall development of the country, end of quote. I will now give a brief account of the results achieved during my visit to Beijing and will explain further under the relevant policy areas later. On promoting the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, or GBA, the central government supports the full implementation by the end of this year of the 24 policy measures that have been approved in principle by the leading group for the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. In addition to measures rolled out earlier, such as tax concessions, facilitation of property purchase, support for young entrepreneurs, cross-boundary remittance of science and technology funding, and liberalization of legal and construction professional services, further measures to be introduced shortly include permitting the use of Hong Kong-registered drugs and common medical devices in designated Hong Kong-owned healthcare institutions in the mainland cities of the GBA, relaxing the limitation on exporting mainland human genetic resources to Hong Kong for research purposes, facilitating Hong Kong private cars traveling to Guangdong via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and expediting the implementation of cross-boundary wealth management connect scheme. On consolidating and enhancing Hong Kong's status as an international financial center, the central government supports further deepening the mutual access between the mainland and the Hong Kong financial markets and the gradual expansion of the scope of eligible securities under the mutual market access programs, and agrees to accelerate the pace of the inclusion of pre-profit biotechnology companies listed in Hong Kong and stocks listed on the mainland Scientech Innovation Board meeting certain prescribed career in the scope of eligible securities under the program. On consolidating and enhancing Hong Kong's status as an international aviation hub, the central government supports participation of the Hong Kong International Airport in the operation and development of Zhuhai Airport through investment by way of share acquisition according to market principles, with a view to deepening the cooperation of the two airports in building a globally competitive world-class airport cluster. On the development of an international innovation technology or INT hub, the central government supports the joint development of the Shenzhen-Hong Kong INT Cooperation Zone, which comprises the Shenzhen INT Zone and the Hong Kong Shenzhen INT Park at the Lok Ma Chau Loop, with a view to establishing one zone, two parks at one river, two banks under the auspices of one country, two systems. On improving the infrastructure of land boundary control points between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, the central government supports the deepening of cooperation between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, the enhancement of the Lok Ma Chau Huanggang control point, and the implementation of co-location arrangements at the new Huanggang control point in Shenzhen, so as to release over 20 hectares of land at the Hong Kong point for other uses. We'll also explore with Shenzhen the enhancement of the Lowell control point in due course. Drawing on the experience of Hong Kong private cars traveling to Guangdong via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, we'll explore the implementation of the same policy at other Hong Kong-Shenzhen land boundary control points. On facilitating Hong Kong enterprises to tap the mainland domestic market, the central government supports the collaboration of the Guangdong province with the Hong Kong Trade Development Council and the relevant chambers of commerce in providing policy, advisory, training, and business matching services to Hong Kong enterprises, thereby enabling them to expand their domestic sales channels and establish interface with the e-commerce platforms in the mainland market. On fighting against the epidemic, the central government supports and requests the Hong Kong SL government to adopt all necessary measures to guard against the importation of cases and resurgence of domestic infections, with the aim of gradually resuming travel between Hong Kong and Guangdong in an orderly manner through mutual recognition of health codes when the epidemic situation in Hong Kong stabilizes. The central government also supports Hong Kong in ensuring the supply of COVID-19 vaccines and will reserve a certain amount of vaccines developed or produced in the mainland for use by Hong Kong people when necessary. Such a strong policy support from the central government is conducive to Hong Kong's putting forward and implementing concrete measures in various areas. The Hong Kong SAR government will strengthen its communication and interface with the relevant ministries and Guangdong provincial government and set up task forces to take forward various initiatives. However, to drive forward the development of various sectors in Hong Kong, we need to comprehensively and accurately implement the principles of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the promulgation of the Basic Law. Looking back at the development journey of the Hong Kong SAR in the past 23 years, we should deeply appreciate the great concept of one country, two systems put forth by Mr. Deng Xiaoping, which has not only successfully resolved the issues left over by history, making it possible for Hong Kong to return to the embrace of our motherland, but also ensure the prosperity and the stability of Hong Kong. Last year, the fourth plenary session of the 19th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China China, adopted the decision on upholding the principle of one country, two systems, maintaining lasting prosperity and stability of Hong Kong and Macau, and promoting the peaceful reunification of China as one of the notable strengths of the state and governance systems of our country. This clearly illustrates the central government's unwavering determination in upholding one country, two systems principle. To ensure that the one country, two systems principle is fully and accurately implemented, we must adhere to the Constitution and the Basic Law. According to Article 31 of the Constitution, the state may establish special administrative regions when necessary. The systems to be instituted in SARs shall be prescribed by law enacted by the National People's Congress in the light of specific conditions. The NPC, or National People's Congress, is the highest organ of state power, and its decisions have the highest legal effect. The Standing Committee of the NPC, or NPCSC, has the power to interpret the Basic Law. The NPC and its Standing Committee have the power to supervise the implementation of the Basic Law. These provisions, in essence, constitute the constitutional order of the Hong Kong SAR. Shortly after my assumption of office, I made it clear that to ensure the robustness of one country, two systems, the Hong Kong SAR must uphold the one country, two principle and handle the relationship between the central government and the Hong Kong SAR correctly. The Chief Executive is responsible to both the Hong Kong SAR and the Central People's Government, CPG. Under the constitutional function of dual responsibility, the Chief Executive is required to comprehensively, accurately and firmly implement the one country, two systems principle and uphold the Basic Law. Under the Basic Law, the Chief Executive is vested with a dual role as head of the executive authorities of the Hong Kong SAR, that is the Hong Kong SAR government, and that of the Hong Kong SAR representing the whole region. One can see the extensive powers conferred upon the Chief Executive by referring to Chapter 4 of the Basic Law, which sets out the provisions relating to the political structure of the Hong Kong SAR. In addition to leading the executive authorities, the Chief Executive has specific roles and functions to play in respect of the exercise of powers and functions by the legislature and the judiciary of Hong Kong. This demonstrates the Hong Kong SAR's adherence to the executive-led structure under the core leadership of the Chief Executive, who is directly accountable to the CPG. Under this framework, the powers of the executive authorities, the legislature, and the judiciary are individually positioned with a division of work. There is no conflict between an executive-led system and an independent judiciary, since one of the Chief Executive's duties is to uphold judicial independence, which is protected under the Basic Law. While the Hong Kong SAR has been established for over 23 years, from time to time there are still divergent views on the basic issues pertaining to the political system, and some issues are politically manipulated due to the society's inadequate understanding of the Constitution and the Basic Law, and the fact that some people's awareness of the one country principle has yet to be enhanced. In addition, ill-intentioned people influenced by external forces have made use of the relatively complicated social and political situation in Hong Kong to deliberately mislead the public about the relationship between the central government and the Hong Kong SAR. In the past year or so, Hong Kong has experienced the most severe political challenges since its return to the motherland. One of our urgent priorities is to restore Hong Kong SAR's constitutional order and political system from chaos. It is the constitutional responsibility of the Hong Kong SAR to safeguard our country's sovereignty, security, and development interests. Article 23 of the Basic Law stipulates that Hong Kong shall enact laws on its own to prohibit specified acts and activities which endanger national security. Notwithstanding Hong Kong's reunification with the motherland 23 years ago, and after 5 terms of government, this legislative exercise is still not yet completed. Hong Kong has become an obvious gaping hole in national security and presented significant risks to the country. Since the onset of the disturbances arising from the opposition to the proposed legislative amendments to the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance in June last year, we've seen escalating violence and damages, as well as opposition forces and organizations advocating Hong Kong independence and self-determination. And these opposition forces and organizations blatantly challenged the authority of the central government, and our government pleaded for interference in Hong Kong's affairs by external forces and even begged for sanctions against Hong Kong. Meanwhile, foreign governments and legislatures have intensified their interference in Hong Kong's affairs, which are squarely China's internal affairs, severely jeopardizing our nation's security. The situation in Hong Kong has evolved to such a state that the central government has no alternative but to step in and take action. On the 30th of June this year, the NPCSC passed the National Security Law and included it in Annex 3 to the Basic Law in accordance with Article 18 of the Basic Law. The law took took effect in Hong Kong on the same day. And over the past 4 months or so, the national security law has been remarkably effective in restoring stability in Hong Kong. Advocacies of Hong Kong independence and collusions with external forces have progressively subsided. Some of the prominent figures have kept a low profile. Radical organizations have ceased operation or dissolved. Those who are suspected of violating the law have absconded, and street violence is significantly on the decline. After a year of social unrest with fear for personal safety, Hong Kong people can once again enjoy their basic rights and freedoms according to the law. I must emphasize that, as expressly provided in Article 4 of the National Security Law, the principle of respecting and protecting human rights will be upheld, and the legitimate rights of Hong Kong people to exercise their freedom of speech, press, assembly, demonstration, procession, etc. will not be compromised in safeguarding national security. According to Article 12 of the National Security Law, the Committee for Safeguarding National Security of the Hong Kong SAR, chaired by me, shall assume primary responsibility for safeguarding national security in the Hong Kong SAR and is supervised by and accountable to the CPG. I and all committee members will do our utmost to fully cooperate with the National Security Advisor appointed by the central government, as well as the Office for Safeguarding National Security and other offices set up by the central government in Hong Kong SAR, and to make the best use of the powers conferred by the National Security Law upon the Hong Kong SAR government. We'll also spare no effort in fulfilling our responsibility in exercising jurisdiction over criminal cases under the National Security Law to effectively prevent, suppress, and punish acts and activities that endanger national security. To safeguard national security comprehensively, it is incumbent upon the Hong Kong SAR government to strengthen publicity and education to enhance Hong Kong people's understanding of national security and law-abiding awareness. We are drawing up relevant plans in accordance with Articles 9 and 10 of the National Security Law, and will make good use of the annual Constitution Day and National Security Education Day to conduct public education on a larger scale. National flag, national emblem, and national anthem are the symbols and signs of a nation and must be protected by law and respected by people. According to Article 18 of the Basic Law, it is the constitutional responsibility of the Hong Kong SAR to implement in Hong Kong national laws listed in Annex 3 to the Basic Law. Upon completion of the local legislative procedures, the National Anthem Ordinance formally came into effect in Hong Kong SAR on the 12th of June 2020. On the 17th of October 2020, the NPCSC endorsed the amendments to the laws of the People's Republic of China on the national flag and the laws of the PRC on the national emblem. The Hong Kong SAR government will introduce suitable amendments to the national flag and national emblem ordinance with a view to implementing provisions that are applicable to the Hong Kong SAR and fulfilling the constitutional responsibility of the Hong Kong SAR. Article 104 of the Basic Law provides that when assuming office, the Chief Executive, principal officials, members of the Executive Council and of the Legislature, judges of the courts at all levels, and other members of the judiciary in the SAR must, in accordance with the law, swear to uphold the Basic Law and swear allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR. The NPCSC endorsed the interpretation of Article 104 on the 7th of November 2016, which explains that the provisions of the article are not only the legal content, which must be included in the oath, but also the legal requirements and preconditions for standing for election or taking up public offices specified in the article. The taking of the oath is a legal pledge made by public officers to the People's Republic of China and the Hong Kong SAR and is legally binding. The interpretation also makes it clear that an oath taker who makes a false oath or who, after taking the oath, engages in conduct in breach of the oath shall bear legal responsibility in accordance with the law. Article 35 of the National Security Law clearly stipulates that the person who is convicted of an offence endangering national security shall immediately be disqualified from standing as a candidate in elections or holding any public office. The NPCSC endorsed the decision on the qualification of electoral members on the 11th of November, expressly stating that the electoral member does not fulfill the legal requirements and conditions on upholding the Basic Law and pledging allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR of the People's Republic of China if the member advocates to support Hong Kong independence, refuses to recognize the People's Republic of China's sovereignty over Hong Kong and the exercise of sovereignty, solicits intervention by foreign or external forces in the Hong Kong SAR's affairs, or carries out other acts that endanger national security. When a member is so decided in accordance with the law, he or she is immediately disqualified from being an electoral member. To implement the Basic Law, the requirements of the National Security Law, as well as the NPCSC's interpretation and decision on the qualification of electoral members, The Hong Kong SAR government will introduce a bill with reference to relevant local court judgments within this year to amend such local laws as the Oaths and Declarations Ordinance and the Legislative Council Ordinance in order to enhance the oath-taking arrangements and to deal with those who have engaged in conduct that breaches the oath after swearing in, as well as the legal consequences and the relevant statutory procedures involved. Pursuant to Article 99 of the Basic Law, civil servants must dedicate themselves to their duties and be responsible to the Hong Kong SAR government. The Hong Kong SAR government has made it clear that all civil servants joining the government on or after the 1st of July 2020 must sign a declaration to uphold the Basic Law, swear allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR of the People's Republic of China and be responsible to the Hong Kong SAR government. As for serving civil servants, the Secretary for the Civil Service will announce the implementation details in due course. The rule of law is a core value and the cornerstone of Hong Kong's success. Hong Kong's rule of law has a solid foundation. Our mature legal system is renowned for being transparent, trustworthy, and fair. The Department of Justice is in charge of criminal prosecution without any interference. Our courts exercise judicial power independently without any interference. And a robust and legal aid system is in place to ensure that all Hong Kong residents are equal before the law. Since our reunification with the motherland, Hong Kong's laws and judicial independence have been highly regarded internationally. More importantly, these elements are protected under the Basic Law. To enhance the community's proper understanding and practice of the rule of law, the Department of Justice will strive to implement a 10-year initiative, Vision 2030 for Rule of Law. Through collaboration with various stakeholders, more targeted public education activities will be carried out, including educating the youth on the proper understanding of the rule of law and promoting their law-abiding awareness, and research on the rule of law and related data compilation will be conducted. Besides, through enhanced efforts in promotion and explanation to clarify misconceptions and misunderstanding, the Department of Justice will continue to showcase that Hong Kong remains a neutral and effective international legal hub for deal-making and dispute resolution services, and to facilitate equal access to justice and sustainable development by creating synergy and momentum through international and regional collaboration. To enhance and promote Hong Kong's status as an international legal hub, the government has provided office accommodation in the west wing of the former central government offices and the former French mission building for over 20 local, regional, and international law-related organizations. Together with the Justice Place in the former central government offices, an iconic legal hub was commissioned on the 2nd of November this year. Fair trial and due process are essential elements of the rule of law. In this respect, the judiciary plays a pivotal role and performs its important constitutional functions under the Basic Law. In the discharge of their responsibilities, judges look only at the letter and the spirit of the law without any interference. However, independent judicial power does not deny a party the opportunity of lodging a complaint against the court ruling. For criminal cases, there is redress by way of an appeal or review, or an application for recusal, whether by the accused or the prosecution. Complaints against the impartiality and conduct of individual judges can also be made to the judiciary. Hong Kong has long been one of the safest cities in the world, and our discipline services are highly trusted by the public. In the past year or so, Hong Kong has experienced social unrest with violent acts and justice law-breaking advocated by some people, severely damaging social order and the rule of law, and posing threats to people's lives and properties. To turn around this situation, we must take stringent law enforcement actions. If there is evidence that someone violates the law, the offender must face legal sanctions regardless of his or her status or background. No one has any privileges under the law. The police will handle the cases in a fair, just, and impartial manner in accordance with the law. Over 2,300 persons are being prosecuted in connection with the disturbances arising from the legislative exercise of the Fugitive Offenders Bill, and the legal proceedings of most of the cases are underway. For arrestees under the age of 18 who have expressed contrition and are not involved in serious offences, the police is prepared to consider handling the cases with measures conducive to their rehabilitation as appropriate, for example, by cautioning them under the police superintendent's discretion scheme or imposing bind-over orders with the prerequisite that the minors must admit their wrongdoings. The 2020 Legislature General Election, originally scheduled for the 6th of September 2020, has been postponed for a year amidst the severe epidemic situation. According to the decision made by the NPCSC, the 6th-term Legislature will continue to discharge its duties for no less than 1 year until the commencement of the 7th-term Legislature. There are views in the community calling for the Electoral Affairs Commission, or EAC, to change and enhance the existing electoral arrangements. Meanwhile, the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau, CMAB, has also reviewed the existing legislation on the regulation of various electoral arrangements. Taking into account the proposals put forward by the EAC last month and the community's views, the CMAB will introduce bills to revise the relevant legislation in due course so as to enhance the electoral system and arrangements. The current time government adopts a proactive fiscal policy with substantial resources devoted to investment for Hong Kong and relieving our people's burden. The government's recurrent expenditure has increased from $361.8 billion in 2017-18, that is the start of this term of the government, to the approved estimate of $486.6 billion in 2020-21, representing a growth of 34.5% or an annual average growth of 10.4%, which is the highest among all previous terms of government. Different sectors have been severely affected amid the tense relations between China and the United States, as well as the outbreak of social unrest and COVID-19. Over the past 6 months or so, the government has rolled out relief measures totaling about $310 billion under this year's financial budget and the 3 rounds of the Anti-Epidemic Fund, or AEF. With the anticipation that the weak economy will persist for quite a long time and the consequent reduction in government revenue, it will be hard to continue to increase government expenditure. However, to avoid impeding the development of Hong Kong, we will continue to invest in infrastructure, develop our land resources, and meet economic and livelihood needs. I advocate that the government should take up the roles of a facilitator and a promoter on top of a regulator and a service provider. The government should be visionary, improve existing policies and measures pursuant to policy objectives, and remove barriers for our industries with a view to maximizing the benefits for the society. Even with stringent control over increases in recurrent expenditure and zero growth in the civil service establishment, departments are required to carry out service reforms by implementing initiatives that can bring benefits and convenience to the public. I noticed that recently members of the Legislature have expressed reservations about the government's requests to create directorate posts under the current situation. I understand members' concern and decide to withdraw all the staff establishment proposals awaiting scrutiny and review them individually. If any of the posts is confirmed to be absolutely necessary, we will only seek to create time-limited supernumerary posts first to handle the relevant duties. On streamlining administrative procedures, we will place special emphasis on streamlining land development control and approval processes, as well as expediting the approval process of applications for lease modifications pertaining to the planning of major private residential sites and other developments. Moreover, bureaus and departments will reform over 900 services under the Streamlining of Government Services program on a continuous basis. In parallel with the optimal use of public resources, we will make good use of the funds set up by the government over the years for supporting various policy objectives and target groups. After taking stock of the situation, I noticed that some of the funds have a substantial balance which can be put to more effective use. I've requested the relevant policy bureaus to examine the situation in a holistic manner with a view to streamlining procedures and strengthening promotion so that the funds that can benefit more members of the community and organizations. I will later on give some examples on how we put the funds to good use. The year 2020 has presented mankind with an unprecedented public health crisis. With the exception of China, the epidemic situation across the globe shows no sign of abating and is even worsening rapidly in some places. Governments around the world have to implement extremely stringent border control and social distancing measures. During almost 1 year of our fight against the epidemic, Hong Kong has remained vigilant and committed. mobilizing the whole community to fight the virus together, the government has been maintaining a high degree of transparency in its anti-epidemic efforts and seeking the cooperation and support of the entire community. During the multiple waves of the epidemic, the Hong Kong community has shown its unity and the spirit of mutual help in working towards a common goal. We've seen a large number of medical staff, serving and retired civil servants, as well as members of the auxiliary services, making concerted efforts to perform arduous tasks such as medical surveillance, contact tracing, virus testing, quarantine and treatment government project teams, as well as contractors and workers laboring day and night to set up more quarantine centers and community treatment facilities within the shortest time. Professional teams traveling to and from the mainland and overseas fearlessly to take Hong Kong people home. Community organizations and volunteers distributing protective equipment to support the underprivileged, and technology personnel zealously exploring the application of research and development of R&D outcomes in related prevention and control work. The SAR government would like to extend its heartfelt gratitude to each and everyone who has joined the fight against the epidemic. The central government is very concerned about the development of the epidemic in Hong Kong and has responded positively to requests from the Hong Kong SAR government, including supplying personal protective equipment, exporting mass production machines, assisting Hong Kong residents stranded in mainland and overseas in returning home, and supporting 3 major projects to help Hong Kong suppress the third wave of the epidemic and enhance our capability in treating patients in the future. With the full support of the central government, the Universal Community Testing Program, which provided voluntary virus testing services for more than 1.7 million people, was concluded smoothly in mid-September. The new community treatment facility at Asia World Expo, AWE, has also been commissioned ahead of schedule early last month, while the construction of a temporary hospital is expected to be completed in January next year. To support Hong Kong in ensuring the supply of vaccines, the central government has recently agreed to reserve a certain amount of vaccines developed or produced in the mainland for use by Hong Kong people when necessary. On behalf of the Hong Kong SAR, I wish to express our sincere gratitude to the central government as well as the provinces and cities which have come to our assistance. As for the arrangements to facilitate cross-border travel, which the public are concerned about, provided that the epidemic in Hong Kong is under control, the central government supports the gradual resumption of travel between Hong Kong and Guangdong without need for compulsory quarantine in an orderly manner through mutual recognition of health codes. Since the outbreak of the epidemic in January this year, the Interdepartmental Steering Committee Command Center led by me has been making timely adjustments to the measures to cope with the ever-changing situation with a view to curbing the epidemic through a multi-pronged approach. In the course of doing so, not only do we have to consider the legal basis of the measures, the level of acceptance from the public and the impact on the economy, but also the practicability of the measures in achieving the desired effects. This is by no means an easy task, but I can assure that every decision we made is based on science, expert advice, and the information available to us at the time, and that political considerations have never come into play. As the research and development of vaccines take time, and the epidemic situation remains unstable and may persist for a period of time, we need to be prepared at all times for the next wave. With the concerted efforts of the government and the sector, the testing capacity of the local private sector has increased from several thousand per day initially to the current level of over 100,000. The cost of testing has also dropped substantially. The anti-epidemic technologies developed locally have also proved to be highly useful. Furthermore, we have set up more quarantine centers and treatment facilities, subsidized the production of masks and other personal protective equipment locally, as well as rolled out 3 rounds of AEF measures to support the sectors and members of the public that have been hard hit by the epidemic. However, in view of the unstable development of the epidemic, we should never lower our guard. Recently, there is a resurgence of confirmed cases and clusters of infection without a known source in the community. The epidemic is on the brink of another wave of outbreak. It is essential for us to take all necessary measures to strengthen epidemic control by guarding against the importation of cases and the resurgence of domestic infections, and further enhance the precision of the control measures. On guarding against the importation of cases, the government has tightened cross-boundary country control measures comprehensively by putting inbound travelers arriving in Hong Kong from countries outside China in compulsory quarantine at hotels for 14 days. And for those coming from high-risk places, they are also required to present proof of a negative virus test result before boarding planes. On breaking the virus transmission chain in the community, we mandate high-risk groups to undergo virus tests and will provide voluntary virus testing service for people without symptoms on a wider scale, and may even implement a large-scale university community testing again in a bid to achieve the target of zero infection, should we have the support and cooperation of the general public, and to resume travelling between the two places at an early date.
Now I'd like to talk about economic development of Hong Kong. Economic development is the basis for a stable life for people. As the COVID-19 pandemic has dealt a heavy blow to economies around the world, reviving the economy and creating employment have become the most pressing issues. Over the past year, Hong Kong's economy has been severely hit by social unrest, the pandemic, and international political situations. The labour market is also under immense pressure. The government forecasts the economy to contract by 6.1% in 2020. As the overall strategy guiding economic development, the current term government emphasizes leveraging our unique advantages under one country, two systems, integrating proactively international development, striving to resolve the two bottlenecks of land and talents, and investing substantially in I&T industries. At the same time, we continue to connect with the world to explore business opportunities. While promoting free trade and maintaining our market economy, the Hong Kong SR government is committed to playing the role of a facilitator and promoter, and will join hands with enterprises to explore more market opportunities and assist professional service providers to go beyond Hong Kong. Since the inclusion of the dedicated chapter on Hong Kong and Macau in the outline of the National 12th Five-Year Plan, the central government has fully positioned Hong Kong's role in planning and taking forward the country's overall development. Furthermore, the Belt and Road Initiative and the GBA development in recent years have provided unlimited opportunities for Hong Kong. While the US and European economies are falling into deep recession, our country has already regained economic growth momentum by vigorously suppressing and strictly controlling the epidemic. There is no reason for us not to take the advantage of this development when we seek to inject impetus to relaunch our economy. The fifth plenary session of the 19th CCCPC has recently adopted the proposals for formulating the 14th Five-Year Plan for National Economic and Social Development at long-range objectives through the year 2030. 5, stating that reform and innovation were the fundamental driving forces to accelerate the establishment of a new development pattern featuring dual circulation, which takes the domestic market as the mainstay while enabling domestic and foreign markets to interact positively with each other. While the main element of the dual circulation strategy is to expand domestic demand, it does not mean our country is closing the door to the outside world. Instead, the mainland's economy will open up in a wider scope, a broader spectrum at a deeper level, so as to make better use of international circulation to enhance domestic circulation. Being a highly market-oriented and international economy underpinned by the rule of law, Hong Kong's development opportunities under our country's new development pattern are evident. Given the advantages under one country, two system, Hong Kong can further strengthen its intermediary role in international circulation. Besides, we can focus on the business opportunities in the mainland market, better integrate into the overall development of our country, take the GBA development as an entry point and proactively become a participant in domestic circulation and a facilitator in international circulation. Playing the dual role well will bring continuous impetus to Hong Kong's economy. As an international financial center, Hong Kong has weathered one crisis after another. In the face of the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic and global economic turmoil, we have confidently demonstrated the resilience and stability of our financial system. The linked exchange rate system has been operating smoothly. The Hong Kong dollar exchange rate has been on the strong side of the capital inflow. The aggregate balance of the banking system increased significantly in the past year, reflecting continued investors' interest and confidence in Hong Kong's capital market. The banking system remains robust, with major banks' average liquidity coverage ratio and an average capital adequacy ratio exceeding 56% and 20% respectively, both well above the international regulatory standards. From end 2019 to end September this year, the total deposits of banks grew by 7.3%. Other facets of the financial services sector, such as the securities and insurance markets, also continue to operate in an orderly manner. In these turbulent times of international and geopolitical tension, the government and the financial regulators will closely monitor financial market development to ensure financial stability. The current term government has proactively taken the initiative to consolidate Hong Kong's status as an international financial market and strengthen its competitive edge. For example, in the last legislative session, we proposed and secured legislative passage of 5 bills in a row to drive the market development of private equity funds, insurance, and MPF. This significant policy-driven development is also found in our securities market. Since the Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing Limited amended the listing rules in April 2018, a total of 36 companies with weighted voting rights structure, pre-profit biotechnology companies and secondary listed companies have been listed in Hong Kong with a total current market capitalization of over 11 trillion Hong Kong dollars. Hong Kong is our country's international financial center. We have rolled out a number of policy initiatives for the mutual access of financial markets in recent years, facilitating both the opening up of the mainland's capital market and the expansion of Hong Kong's financial services. The central government continues to support Hong Kong in consolidating and enhancing our status as an international financial center. Apart from expediting the implementation of cross-boundary wealth management connect system in the GBA, the central government has, during my visit to Beijing, agreed to include pre-profit biotechnology companies listed in Hong Kong under new listing regime and stocks listed on mainland Scientech Innovation Board, meeting certain prescribed criteria into the stock universe of the mutual market access programs. This initiative will add a bright spot to the mutual access of the financial markets of the two places. We also strive to promote real estate investment trust REIT in Hong Kong to develop Hong Kong into a vibrant REIT market in Asia. This will strengthen the capital raising function of Hong Kong as a premium asset and wealth management center and broaden the investment options with a relatively stable return for local investors. To this end, we're considering various measures through a multi-pronged approach, including relaxing the investment restrictions on REIT as appropriate, broadening the investor base, facilitating market operation through legislative and regulatory enhancement, and stepping up market promotion and investor education. With a view to consolidating Hong Kong's position as Asia's premier fund hub for private equity, will provide tax concession for carried interest issued by private equity funds operating in Hong Kong subject to the fulfillment of certain conditions. We have consulted the industry and are formulating the legislative proposal with the aim of introducing an amendment bill into the LegCo shortly. The family office business has flourished in recent years, becoming an important growth segment in the wealth and asset management industry. To further development of the family office business in Hong Kong, Invest Hong Kong will set up a dedicated team to set up promotion of advantages in local and other major markets and offer one-stop support services to family offices which are interested in establishing a presence here. I'd like to turn to Hong Kong's status as an international aviation hub. Capitalizing on its advantages in terms of geographical location and management, the Hong Kong IA has strived to reform for the better in recent years. Although the global aviation industry is badly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, we maintain full confidence in Hong Kong as an international aviation hub. The Outline Development Plan for the Guangdong Hong Kong Macau GBA, or Outline Development Plan, also explicitly mentions Hong Kong's status as an international aviation hub. The Hong Kong Authority Hong Kong AAHK will commission the third runway in 2022 and the entire three-runway system in 2024 as planned. It is expected that the premium logistics center will be completed in 2023 and the Sky City development projects will be completed in phases between 2021 and 2027. The AAHK has been operating and managing the Zhuhai Airport under a franchise since 2006 with excellent results. The commissioning of the HZMB provides an opportunity for further cooperation between the two airports by integrating the mainland aviation network of the Zhuhai Airport with the international network of Hong Kong IA, strengthening the competitive edge of the entire GB in aviation, thereby enabling Hong Kong's aviation business to play a key dual role in the dual circulation policy. I've earlier put forward a series of recommendations to the central government on consolidating and enhancing Hong Kong's status as an international aviation hub, which include allowing the AAHK to inject equity into the Zhuhai Airport on the basis of market principles for achieving greater synergy between the two airports. I would like to express my gratitude to the central government for its full support to those recommendations during my visit to Beijing. The Civil Aviation Administration of China has also agreed to commence preparation for the provision of cross-boundary commercial helicopter services between Guangdong and Hong Kong, which will enhance the internationalized business environment in the GBA. Moreover, to further leverage the Hong Kong IA's contribution in promoting Hong Kong's economic development, the Hong Kong SL government has accepted a number of proposals put forward by AAHK to develop automated car parks on the Hong Kong boundary crossing facilities or HKBCF Island of the HZMB, where self-drive visitors from Guangdong and Macau driving the cars via the HZMB and fly out from the Hong Kong IA or visit Hong Kong can park their cars there. Land-to-air transfer passengers, after parking their private cars in the automated car parks, may proceed to the boarding gates directly through the international transfer terminal located within the restricted area of the airport without the need to go through Hong Kong's immigration clearance. Other visitors may go through clearance procedures at the passenger clearance building at the HKBCF to enter Hong Kong after parking. The second is to take forward the Airport City Link project connecting the Sky City and the HKBCF Island by constructing a bridge system and by applying autonomous transportation system to strengthen the overall transportation network and capacity, thereby connecting the Sky City, the HZMB, Hong Kong Port and Hong Kong IAS1. As the next step, the AHK plans to extend the autonomous transportation system of the Airport City Link to Tung Chung Town Centre and optimize the roads along the eastern coast of the airport island so as to provide a comprehensive and environmentally friendly transport link connecting Tung Chung Town Centre, the airport island, and the HKBCF Island. To construct the Hong Kong International Aviation Academy campus and student dormitories on the HKBCF Island, in order to strengthen talent training and attract more Hong Kong youth to join the aviation industry, and to reserve part of the land parcels on HKBCF Island for the development of the air cargo logistics and related supporting facilities for the airport community. This innovative idea of optimizing the use of the land adjacent to the airport will not only provide more job opportunities and a better living environment for the expanding Tung Chung community, but also inject new development elements and economic impetus into the whole Northland town. The AHK will brief the public on this project later. Innovation and technology. Hong Kong has universities with strong R&D capabilities, a pool of talent and foreign talents, a fervent R&D atmosphere, as well as a thriving startup ecosystem. Over the past 3 years or so, with the support of the Ministry of Science and Technology as a result of the Hong Kong government's high-level steer, cross-boundary collaboration, and also investment worth $100 billion, as well as the implementation of the 8 major directions set out in my 2017 policy address, Hong Kong's R&D development has been very vibrant. Some even describe it as the dawn of a golden era for R&D development. The progress achieved in various areas of work is detailed in this year's policy address supplement. The COVID-19 epidemic has enabled Hong Kong to successfully demonstrate how technology can be applied to solve problems. In combating the pandemic, the Hong Kong community has made good use of local R&D outcomes to prevent and control the disease, address livelihood needs, as well as commercialize these outcomes. Since the promulgation of a Smart City Blueprint for Hong Kong in late 2017, we've been making every effort to implement initiatives under the blueprint of good progress on the whole. Among them, the faster payment system launched in 2018 has turned a new page for electronic payment in Hong Kong with money transaction volume exceeding 12 million and amounting to over $130 billion. We set out more than 130 Smart City initiatives in the Smart City Blueprint for Hong Kong 2.0 to be released next month, aiming to help people perceive how a smart city and the use of INT can benefit their daily lives. To further promote smart government and the digital transformation of the whole society, we'll launch the I Am Smart in December this year. It will offer over 20 frequently used public services initially, including online application for vehicle license renewal and electronic submission of tax returns. We'll invite other public utilities to provide services on the platform. We hope the commercial sector will actively participate in the I Am Smart platform. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone. Hong Kong and Shenzhen, two neighboring cities, share a unique relationship which is as good as ever after so many years. From the front shop back plant model in the early days of our country's reform and opening up to the cooperation between the two strong players in the areas of INT today, the relationship between Hong Kong and Shenzhen is always robust and thriving. The central government strongly supports the cooperation between Hong Kong and Shenzhen in developing an international INT hub in the GBA and has agreed to the joint development of the Shenzhen-Hong Kong Innovation and Technology Cooperation Zone, which comprises the Shenzhen Innovation Technology Zone and Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park at the Long Ma Chau Loop, with a view to establishing one zone, two parks at one river, two banks under auspices of one country, two system. During my visit to Shenzhen, I've agreed with the leaders of the Shenzhen municipality that we should adopt the spirit of innovative thinking, pushing new limits and sharing new resources and taking forward the related work. The governments of the two cities are exploring the feasibility of allowing the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation to lease and manage certain areas of the Innovation Technology Zone in Futian, Shenzhen, so that institutes and enterprises which are interested in starting the business in the GBA can establish a presence in the SITZ before the completion of the first batch of buildings in HSITP. Such cooperation is imperative because on the road of INT, one will never go too fast and should strive to go faster. We will seize the opportunity to foster the development of the ecological chains of INT industry in Hong Kong and Shenzhen so as to offer tremendous employment and startup business opportunities for young people of Hong Kong. Talent is the key to success of INT development. Over the past few years, we have substantially increased funding for local postgraduate students and resources for nurturing technology talents. Recently, some university presidents told me that quite a number of outstanding R&D talents working overseas are interested in coming to work in Asia in view of the rapid INT development in Hong Kong, and that Hong Kong should seize this opportunity to attract more INT talents. As such, I propose launching a global STEM professorship scheme for a period of 5 years at an estimated cost of $2 billion. There are a number of large-scale technology enterprises in Shenzhen which require an extension pool of talents in transferring R&D outcomes into application. Recently, some enterprises have taken the initiative to contact me and express a wish to provide employment opportunities in the GBA for young people of Hong Kong who aspire to pursue a career in the INT sector. Later, I'll talk about the proposed GBA youth employment scheme under which several hundreds of places will be set aside for the INT sector. Infrastructure investment is conducive to economic development and can create a significant number of job opportunities. Based on past experience, scaling back infrastructure and seizing land creation during an economic downturn would have an adverse impact on the economy and people's livelihood. In view of this, the government will continue to invest in infrastructure with an estimated annual expenditure of over $100 billion on average in the next few years and strive to ensure the early commencement of capital works projects. To enable more district-based livelihood projects which can create jobs to be launched as soon as possible, we propose that LegCo should raise the expenditure ceiling of each minor works project funded under the block votes from the current $30 million to $50 million. We believe this would expedite the implementation of projects that are closely related to the daily lives of the people, such as renovation of school and leisure facilities, works on improving environmental hygiene, as well as minor works on roads, drainage, and water supply. Over the past few years, the Development Bureau has been proactively implementing the Construction 2.0 initiative to facilitate the professionalization and revitalization of the traditional construction industry with a wide adoption of the INT, the speedy completion of the quarantine center at Lei Yue Moon Park and Holiday Village with the use of the modular integrated construction method amid the epidemic has been acclaimed by the Institution of Civil Engineers of the United Kingdom. To further promote the digitalization and innovation of the construction industry as well as enhance project performance, I'll chair an international construction leaders summit next year to collect views from and formulate strategies with various stakeholders. During my visit to Beijing, I conveyed to the central government officials the difficulties encountered by Hong Kong enterprises through their set-up factories in mainland for manufacturing goods for export due to the sluggish U.S. and European markets. The central government understood the difficulties and agreed to provide assistance to Hong Kong enterprises in tapping into the mainland domestic market. For example, the HKTDC will launch a one-stop Go GPA platform in collaboration with the Guangdong Province and related chambers of commerce to provide multifaceted support for Hong Kong enterprises, including market information on the GBA and related government policies, encourage service and training, as well as business promotion, development and matching services. In addition, the HKDC will help Hong Kong enterprises gain access to the large-scale e-commerce platforms in the mainland through the provision of training and the cooperation of the online design gallery, as well as promoting awareness and image of Hong Kong products on these platforms. Besides, the Council will also use its physical network in the mainland to provide business support for Hong Kong enterprises in handling operational issues such as import declaration, logistics, and settlement of payment. Will further consolidate Hong Kong's position as a prime platform and a key link for the B&R initiative and strengthen the cooperation with B&R-related countries and regions so as to open up a larger market for various sectors. The Hong Kong SL government is seeking to organize jointly a high-level roundtable of the State-owned Asset Supervision and Administrative Commission of the State Council to explore enhancements of modern corporate governance and to strengthen R&D application by leveraging the international experience and professional strengths of Hong Kong, thereby enhancing the competitiveness to go global through mutual collaboration. We'll also launch a mainland enterprise partnership exchange and interface program in the coming year to facilitate exchanges and networking that foster cooperation between Hong Kong's professional services sector and mainland enterprises, strengthen the capacity building of both sides and enhance the international outlook, market orientation, and professional standards of various projects. The Ministry of Commerce will continue to support the Hong Kong South Government in encouraging Hong Kong enterprises to set up business in the mainland's overseas economic and trade cooperation zones. In this connection, both sides have selected 5 ETZZs within the Association of Southeast Asian Nation region in Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia, and Indonesia, and priorities will be given to promoting the electronics, toys, electrical appliances industry, etc., on a pilot basis. A total of 15 economies, including the 10 ASEAN states, Australia, China, Japan, South Korea, and New Zealand, has just signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership RCEP agreement on the 15th of November. The RCEP covers about 1/3 of the world's total population, accounting for 1/3 of the global GDP. On the RCEP, over 90% of the merchandise trade will eventually enjoy zero tariff treatment, which will certainly increase regional trade and investment and provide impetus for global economic growth. As a major financial and trade center and logistics hub of the region, coupled with the free trade agreements signed with most of the RCEP members, including the 10 ASEAN states, Australia and New Zealand, as well as the Closer Economic Partnership Arrangement, CEPA, signed with the mainland earlier on, Hong Kong is well placed to join the RCEP. The Hong Kong SL government has already expressed to the signatory economies its interest in joining the RCEP back in 2018, and we seek to be among the first batch of economies joining the RCEP. Since the promulgation of the outline development plan by the central government in February 2019, various central ministries have issued a number of policy documents to support the development of financial, legal, and professional services in the GBA, as well as rolled out measures to facilitate Hong Kong and Macau residents to work, live, and study in the mainland cities of the GBA. During my meeting with leaders of the Guangdong province and Songzhen municipality earlier this month, we agreed to press ahead with the work in areas such as cross-boundary infrastructure development and clearance facilitation, joint development of an international I&T hub, cooperation in modern service industries, education, nurturing of tenants and youth exchanges, as well as joint development of a quality living circle. Specific cooperation projects include: first, supporting Hong Kong's insurance industry in establishing after-sale service centers in the mainland cities of the GBA under the framework of the CEPA to provide Hong Kong, Macau, and mainland residents who are holders of Hong Kong policies with comprehensive support in different areas, including inquiries, claims, and renewal of policies. Two, implementing as soon as possible the arrangement of using Hong Kong registered drugs and medical devices used in Hong Kong public hospitals at the University of Hong Kong Shenzhen Hospital on a trial basis, subject to the approval of the Guangdong province, and extending policy to cover more designated healthcare institutions, drugs and medical devices in a timely manner. Allowing traditional proprietary Chinese medicine products for external use registered in Hong Kong to be registered and sold in the GBA through a streamlined approval process. 4. Pressing ahead with the quota-free scheme for Hong Kong private cars traveling to Guangdong via the HZMB after the commissioning of the Twin Moon Check-up Kok Tunnel, allowing eligible Hong Kong private cars to travel between Hong Kong and Guangdong via the HZMB without quota. The scheme will facilitate Hong Kong residents to drive to the Guangdong province for business, visiting families, or sightseeing on a short-term basis. The Hong Kong SI, the Guangdong governments will draw on the implementation experience of the scheme at the HCMB and proactively study extension of the scheme to Hong Kong-Shenzhen land boundary control points such that Hong Kong private cars can travel to both the eastern and western parts of Guangdong. Rationalizing the Hong Kong-Shenzhen land boundary control points for adjusting the functions and extending operating hours of some of these land boundary control points so as to progressively implement the east in, east out, west in, west out planning strategy for cross-boundary goods traffic. We shortly explore with the Shenzhen municipal government on the implementation of co-location arrangement at the new Huanggang port situated in Shenzhen so as to release over 20 hectares of land in Hong Kong's Lot Ma Chau control point for other users, supporting and assisting various universities in Hong Kong in their plans to provide educational services in the GBA, providing support to the GBA Youth Employment Scheme and the funding scheme for youth entrepreneurship in the GBA launched by the Hong Kong SL government, establishing the Pan-GBA Inward Investment Liaison Group to enable Invest Hong Kong and its counterparts in other cities in the GBA to develop holistic and joint inward investment propositions with a view to enhancing strategy and jointly promoting the development of equine industry in the GBA through collaboration with the Hong Kong Jockey Club and its race course in Chonghua, Guangzhou. Tourism is one of Hong Kong's 4 pillar industries, and the number of petitioners amount to nearly 260,000. Our tourism industry has been subject to multiple blows since the second half of 2019. With cross-border people flow almost coming to a standstill, business is almost frozen. In view of this, the government has implemented a number of targeted relief measures since the second half of 2019 to help the industry tide over this difficult period. Given that the tourism industry will continue to face grave and prolonged challenges for quite some time in the future, the government will roll out additional relief measures for the industry, involving a total commitment of close to $600 million. These measures will benefit travel agents and their staff, freelance accredited tourist guides and tour escorts, whose main occupations are tourist guides and tour escorts, and drivers of tour service coaches mainly serving tourists. Once the epidemic is eased, it will tap into more local cultural and green tourism resources to revive our tourism industry with a view to expanding both the mainland and overseas visitors source market as well as offering leisure and traveling experience of rich historical and cultural elements to local visitors. The persisting pandemic will alter the global tourism landscape. The Hong Kong Tourism Board is taking an opportunity to examine the positioning of Hong Kong's tourism to meet future challenges. When I visit Beijing later, I will strive to enlist the continuous support of the Ministry of Culture and Tourism in the tourism cooperation between Hong Kong and the mainland and enhance the quality of the tourism industry. The government has launched the Convention and Exhibition Industry Subsidy Scheme under the AEF with a commitment of over $1 billion to provide impetus for the convention and exhibition industry in the next year or so. In the long run, we still have great confidence in the C&E industry. We take forward the plan to redevelop the sites of the 3 government towers in Wan Chai North and the Kong Wang Fire Station into C&E facilities, hotel, and Grade A office. The AHK will also invest in the construction of Phase 2 of the AWE. These 2 projects in total will increase C&E space by more than 40%. As for the proposal to develop a new convention center on the site above the exhibition station of the Sha Tin to Central Link, in view of the technical difficulties involved, the uncertainties concerning the construction period and concerns about cost effectiveness, we have decided to use the site for other purposes. To facilitate small and medium enterprises to apply for relevant funding from various government support schemes in a quick and easier way, we formed the SME Reach Out Service Team to provide one-stop consultation and referral services. We plan to extend the scope of this SME Export Marketing Fund for 2 years to cover large-scale exhibitions organized by organizers with proven track record targeting the local market, as well as virtual exhibitions organized by the HKTDC and reputable exhibition organizers with good track record. Their eligibility criteria will also be relaxed to cover non-SMEs. To further encourage the professional services sectors to set up promotion of Hong Kong's competitive edges and professional services to the mainland cities of the GBA and overseas market after the pandemic has stabilized, we will set aside $50 million under the Professional Services Advancement Support Scheme to subsidize major professional bodies to participate in relevant activities organized by the Hong Kong State Government, the HKTDs, and overseas economic and trade offices. In order to alleviate the financial burden of enterprises and support them in obtaining commercial loans, the government has rolled out the 90% guarantee product and the special 100% guarantee product in the past year. Meanwhile, many banks have been offering extension of principal payment holiday with the support of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Some members of this council have proposed that the government should abolish the doubled ad valorem stamp duty (DST) imposed on non-residential properties transactions, so as to facilitate enterprises to cash out by selling non-residential properties to address their financial predicament or liquidity needs because of the economic downturn. At my request, the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau has recently completed a review of the measure, which was introduced in 2013 as a demand-side management measure to rein in the soaring prices of non-residential properties. As a result of the economic downturn and uncertainties surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, prices and demand for non-residential properties which have been dropping over a period of time, the government considers now the right time to abolish the DST imposed on non-residential properties, to allow relevant property owners to benefit immediately from the proposal. The Executive Council approved this morning the introduction of the relevant amendments to the stamp duty ordinance. I've also exercised my statutory powers and made a public revenue protection order to give effect to the abolition of the DST on non-residential property transactions with effect from tomorrow, that is the 26th of November. We'll continue to monitor the developments of the non-residential property market and resort to appropriate measures again as and when necessary to ensure the stable development of the market. Given the tight housing supply and that residential property prices remain beyond the reach of the average households, I must stress that the government has no plan to adjust any of the stamp duty rates concerning residential properties. The fifth generation mobile communications technology, 5G, is not only an important infrastructure of the communications industry, but also a driver to upgrade and transform the overall economy. The 5G coverage of major mobile network operators is expected to reach 9% of the population this year. We plan to release more 5G spectrum in different frequency bands in 2021 to meet the needs of various 5G applications in terms of speed, capacity, and coverage. In addition, we have been discussing with the two satellite operators in the relocation of the telemetry, tracking, and control stations in Tai Po to Chung Ham Kok Teleport. The relocation and installation of the relevant facilities are expected to be completed in 4 years. By then, various mobile network operators will be able to deploy the 5G frequency bands in a more holistic and efficient manner and improve their coverage. To further promote the development of 5G application, we've extended the application period of the subsidy scheme concerned under the AEF for 6 months until May next year, and have worked with a number of public organizations to encourage the deployment of 5G technology in various sectors. We also facilitated the early adoption of 5G technology and application in government departments and public organizations. Creative industries highlight the humanity features of Hong Kong people with the cultures of East and West meet, making Hong Kong an even more attractive international city and given new energy to our diversified economy. I've made an injection of $1 billion each into the Create Smart Initiative and the Film Development Fund in 2018 and 2019 respectively, and the industry has responded enthusiastically. The global film industry has been hard hit by the pandemic, and related economic activities have almost come to a halt. The Commerce and Economic Development Bureau announced in mid-July this year that around $260 million have been earmarked under the FDF to implement various measures to address the needs of the industry at different levels, help retain talents, and inject fresh impetus into the sector. The Create Smart initiative received around 200 new applications in the past 2 years or so, and over $800 million of funding has been granted so far. Our pledge and determination to vigorously promote the development of the creative industries remain unchanged. I propose to inject an additional $1 billion into the Create Smart initiative to further promote the development of the creative industries in Hong Kong and provide support for them to adapt to the impacts arising from the new normal under the epidemic. With the advancement of technology, the integration of arts and INT has become a new trend in arts development. Besides, during the pandemic, the application of technology has also enabled us to enjoy a wide array of visual and performing arts at home. The application of technology has extended the horizon of creativity in arts and brought new opportunities for the arts and creative industries. Leveraging the bold and innovative spirit of local artists, I believe that with the active promotion and support of the government, art tech will flourish and thrive in Hong Kong. The promotion of art tech calls for inter-bureau cooperation. I've asked the Secretary for Home Affairs to take the lead in setting up a task force comprising representatives from the INT Bureau, the CEDB, as well as the Education Bureau, and invite the participation of representatives from the relevant sectors and NGOs to formulate strategies and measures to develop and promote art tech. The government will be more proactive in encouraging the related sectors to apply for funding under the Arts and Sport Development Fund, the Innovation Technology Fund, the Film Development Fund, and the Create Smart initiative to implement projects that integrate technology and arts. To this end, we've set aside a total of $100 million under the various funds and provide venues and complementary facilities for experimental use. As an international legal hub, Hong Kong faces a pressing need to enhance the capability of its legal profession by harnessing modern technology in the provision of legal and dispute resolution services. Further to the establishment of the Law Tech Fund and the COVID-19 online dispute resolution scheme under the second round of the AEF, the DFJ will actively explore the development of the Hong Kong Legal Cloud, a state-of-the-art online facility equipped with advanced information security technology to provide secure, reliable, and affordable data storage services for the local legal and dispute resolution sector to promote the overall long-term development of Hong Kong's legal and dispute resolution services. Agriculture and fisheries industry. The government is committed to promoting high-value added and sustainable development of these two industries. We established the agricultural park in Kwu Tung North to facilitate the development of agro-technology and modernization of farm management, as well as provide technical support to farmers. Works on agricultural park phase 1 will commence shortly and is expected to be completed in phases between next year and 2023. Regarding the fisheries industry, the government has resumed issuing new marine fish culture licenses in the beginning of this year and is preparing to designate new fish culture zones at 4 locations in Hong Kong waters to increase fish production. Related EIA is underway and expected to be completed in 2022. We also support Hong Kong fishermen to participate in the development of deep-sea mariculture in the GBA. Last year, we signed a cooperation agreement with the relevant authorities of the Guangdong provincial government and will provide assistance under the Sustainable Fisheries Development Fund and set up a modern demonstration farm to help the fisheries trade switch to deep-sea mariculture. The social unrest last year dealt a heavy blow to Hong Kong's image as a safe city internationally and in the mainland. The unreasonable criticism and smearing of the central government's enactment of the national security law in Hong Kong and the NPCS's decision on the qualification of LegCo members by some foreign countries and political organizations have also undermined the confidence of overseas enterprises in the rule of law and freedom in Hong Kong. We should seize the opportunity to clarify the misconceptions and misunderstandings and showcase Hong Kong's unique strengths and extraordinary charm to the outside world again. When the pandemic situation stabilizes, we'll roll large-scale publicity and promotion strategies to promote Hong Kong to businessmen, investors, entrepreneurs, researchers, and talents around the world. Moreover, to restore the confidence of various mainland sectors in Hong Kong, the 5 mainland offices of the Hong Kong SL government will launch publicity programs through diversified platforms in various places in mainland to enhance our promotion work.
Next, on housing and land. Housing is the crux of the many problems faced by Hong Kong. It is not just a crucial living condition, but also the basis for fulfilling people's aspirations for a stable and comfortable home. For the grassroots and low-income families, government-subsidized housing is an effective policy alleviation measure. For the middle class and the fairly well-off families, buying a flat means realizing the dream of having a home of their own. For the society as a whole, housing is not only a matter of supply and demand, but also an issue of social justice and allocation of resources. From the point of view of governance, unresolved housing problems may jeopardize the long-term prosperity and stability of society. According to the government's established policies, we have regularized the Green Form Subsidized Home Ownership Scheme, GSH, and White Form Secondary Market Scheme, and introduced Starter Home SH pilot projects to enrich the housing ladder. We've also raised the share of public housing in new housing supply from 60 to 70%, linked the selling prices of subsidized sale flats, SSFs, from market prices, and set the prices at an affordable level. We entrusted the Urban Renewal Authority, or URA, with the social mission of assisting the government in providing starter homes, and revised the land premium arrangement for the subsidized housing projects of the Hong Kong Housing Society, HKHS, to enable the provision of more public housing units by the HKHS. For families waiting for public rental housing and PRH and residents living in poor living conditions who have yet to get on the first rung of the housing ladder, the government has committed to provide 15,000 transitional housing units within 3 years, launching a trial scheme to provide cash allowance for low-income families awaiting PRH allocation for a prolonged period, and conducting a study on tenancy control for subdivided units, SDUs. Some reform measures represent a breakthrough in government thinking. As the chief executive, sometimes I need to stand firm in the face of different opinions for a cause in which I believe. Meeting Hong Kong's people's housing needs is a goal too important to forsake. Our efforts over the years in increasing housing supply have started to pay off. I now announce that based on the long-term housing strategy annual progress report 2020 to be published by the Transport and Housing Bureau, we have identified all of the 330 hectares of land required for providing 316,000 public housing units to meet the demand for about 1,000 public housing units in the coming 10 years. Such land supply mainly comes from reclamation in Tung Chung, the agricultural land and brownfield sites in new development areas, NDAs, such as Kutong North, Fanning North, Hong Shui Kiu, Hachun, a number of sites which have been rezoned for public housing development, reallocation of 9 sites at Kai Tak and Anderson Road Quarry for public housing development, partial development of the Fanning Golf Course, and a number of brownfield clusters with housing development potential, the review of which has already been completed. The Hong Kong Housing Authority launched the Home Ownership Scheme, HOS 2020, with applications closing early last month to provide 7,000 flats. These HOS flats, with selling prices set at 60% of the market price, have attained an oversubscription of 33 times, while GSX 2019, involving 3,700 flats, is at the flat selection stage. Around 4,700 GSH flats will be put up for sale in phases next year, with the first batch of about 2,100 flats expected to be launched in May next year. I proposed in my policy address last year that the HKHA shall make active preparation to accelerate the sale of the recovered flats in 39 Tenants Purchase Scheme TPS estates. In July this year, the HA endorsed putting up the recovered TPS for sale to eligible green farm applicants together with other flats in the annual HOS and GSH sale exercises. The HKHA is carrying out the preparatory work to put up over 700 recovered flats for sale together with other flats in the next GSH sale exercise. The URA has proactively embarked on this new mission to provide more starter homes in its redevelopment projects. It has decided to assign the redevelopment project adjacent to the e-residence as another SH project, which is expected to provide about 260 units for sale in 2024. After a comprehensive structural investigation of the building condition of Shack-Ley interim housing, the HKHA considered that it would not be cost-effective to maintain the buildings beyond 2022. The Strategic Planning Committee of the HKHA has decided to clear the interim housing in late 2022 for public housing development. It is estimated that the redevelopment will be completed in 2028. Subject to approval for relaxation of relevant planning restrictions, about 1,600 units are expected to be provided. Regarding the proposal in last year's policy address to explore the feasibility of redeveloping 6 factory estates of HKHA for public housing use, the preliminary findings of the study indicates that 3 of the sites can be used for public housing development. The HKHA expects to complete the necessary studies in the first quarter of 2021 and will conduct rezoning procedures in accordance with the town planning ordinance. It is estimated that a total of over 3,000 public housing units will be provided in 2031. With the government's coordination and facilitation, we're pleased to learn that the Hong Kong Settlers Housing Corporation Limited and the URA have reached an intention of collaboration in taking forward the redevelopment plan of Tai Hang Site Estate with a view to making the best use of the development potential of the site and improving the facilities as early as possible. According to preliminary estimates of the 2 parties, the redevelopment plan can provide over 3,300 units upon completion, doubling the existing 1,600 flats. The current term government is committed to promoting the development of transitional housing. By making better use of vacant land and premises, we aim to provide short-term accommodation for people with pressing housing needs. We're heartened to have the staunch support of property and land owners and NGOs which take part in the construction and operation of transitional housing. With the facilitation and coordination of the Task Force on Transitional Housing under the THB, encouraging progress has been made in this initiative over the past year. In overall terms, including 3,400 units currently under in-depth deliberation, we have identified land for the provision of 13,200 units in total for the coming 3 years, falling short of the target of 15,000 units only by 12%, and our efforts will continue. The government also proposes to inject an additional $3.3 billion into the relevant funding scheme, increasing the total government commitment to $8.3 billion. So far, $2.2 billion have been approved under the scheme. Meanwhile, many hotels and guest houses are facing the crisis of closing down amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The government will implement a pilot scheme to subsidize NGOs to rent suitable rooms in hotels and guest houses with relatively low occupancy rates for use as transitional housing. The THB plans to seek funding from the Community Care Fund, CCF, to launch the pilot scheme shortly with a view to increasing the supply of transitional housing. While the government will continue to adopt a multi-pronged approach to increase housing supply, an unprecedented trial scheme has been endorsed to provide a cash allowance for grassroots families which have waited for PRH allocation for a long period of time so as to relieve their pressure on livelihood. Under the trial scheme, eligible general applicant households, families with 2 or more persons and elderly 1-person applicants which are not living in public housing and not receiving comprehensive social security assistance, CSSA, and have been waiting for PRH for more than 3 years without being given the first flat offer will be provided with cash allowance. According to preliminary estimates, around 90,000 general applicant households will benefit from the trial scheme. The government is working out the implementation details of the scheme and aims to start receiving applications in mid-2021 and disbursing cash allowance from July onwards. Now, one of the controversies of providing cash allowance to families waiting for PRH or living in private properties, especially SDUs, is the lack of adequate protection for such tenants. I agree that this issue needs to be examined. The task force for the study on tenancy control of subdivided units was set up in April this year, and 3 dedicated working groups were established in July to explore such issues as the social, economic, and legal aspects relating to SDUs, and consultants were appointed to undertake research studies. The task force is collecting views of various sectors on whether and how tenancy control of SDUs should be implemented and strives to complete the study in the first quarter of 2021 and submit its report to the government for consideration. The current term government has adjusted its principles and policy on housing to enlarge and enrich the overall public housing supply in Hong Kong. But ultimately, the core of the housing problem in Hong Kong lies in the shortage of land for housing development. The HKHA, HKHS, and URA and private developers have the capability and capacity to build more flats. The only thing we need to do is work together and support the government's multi-pronged land creation strategy and the various short, medium, and long-term initiatives to increase land supply. Due to the impact of the epidemic, we've seen a downward adjustment in construction costs and an increase in manpower supply in the construction industry. This is an excellent opportunity to move ahead with land creation and housing construction. With adequate supply, it is believed that property prices will become stable gradually. I now move on to land supply. Increasing land supply has been a top priority of the current term government. Under the policy direction of government-led land use planning and coordination of infrastructure development, we've made bold decisions to develop land for housing construction and economic development. The positive results of land creation in recent years and the latest progress of the government on the 8 land supply options recommended for priority studies and implementation by the Task Force on Land Supply are provided in detail in this year's policy address supplement. Transport infrastructure helps unleash the development potential of land and plays an important role in increasing land and housing supply. As the Northwest New Territories and the New Territories North have huge development potential, the government will expedite the implementation of the Northern Link Railway project to tie in with the population intake of the public housing development in Kutong North NDA, and also provide impetus for growth in the area covering Santin, Ngau Tam Mei, and Ao Tau. So far, the government has identified housing sites with a total area of about 90 hectares, equal to the size of 4 Tai Kwu Shings along the Northern Link, including the Shantin Lok Ma Chau development node, and related studies are being conducted progressively. If the Northern Link project is implemented, it is anticipated that over 70,000 housing units can be provided on these sites. We've drawn up the outline zoning plan for the Siu Ho Wan Depot site, the topside development of the MTR Corporation Limited. Based on the latest assessment, it is expected that the site may provide about 20,000 residential units in the medium to long term, of which around 50% will be SSFs. This is going to be the second topside public housing project on railway facilities since the Cornhill development on the Island Line 4 decades ago in the 1980s. This demonstrates the current term government's determination in expanding public housing supply. The studies on resuming 3 urban squatter areas in Chak Ho Ling, Ngau Chi Wan, and Chok Yun United Village for redevelopment into high-density public housing have made good progress. In view of the experience of the HKHS in housing production, rehousing of residents, and integrated community planning, we will invite the HKHS to undertake the implementation of the 3 projects. We strive to commence the rezoning procedures progressively in the first half of 2021, and if things go smoothly, it is expected that site formation and infrastructure works will start in phases in 2025. These 3 projects are expected to provide a total of 6,300 public housing units. Privately owned land has always been an important source of housing supply. The government launched a 3-year land sharing pilot scheme in May this year and has embarked on initial discussions with interested landowners. Besides, as proposed in last year's policy address, the Development Bureau has reviewed private land zoned for high-density housing development, but without any specific development plan, and assessed whether any such land is suitable for public housing development. It is expected that the related work will be completed by the end of this year. The Development Bureau will set up the Development Projects Facilitation Office, PDFO, to facilitate the processing of planning, lease modification, and other development approval applications for larger-scale private residential sites leading up to the commencement of works. PDFO will coordinate with departments involved to expedite the approval process and help resolve issues, including early escalation of unresolved issues to higher levels for steer. The Tuen Mun Chek Lap Kok Tunnel, scheduled for commissioning at the end of this year, and the MTR Tuen Mun South Extension, which is now at the detailed planning and design stage, will help drive the development of Tuen Mun West. We continue to prepare for the planning and engineering studies on the development potential of the reclaimed land at Long Gu Tan, about 220 hectares, and the coastal area at Tuen Mun West, about 220 hectares. And we will also review the need for the river trade terminal through these studies, with a view to increasing the potential of Tuen Mun West area for residential development and or other more beneficial uses. Lantau Tomorrow Vision. While the above-mentioned multi-pronged land creation efforts will undoubtedly provide part of the medium-term housing supply beyond the 10-year period under the existing long-term housing strategy, the medium and long-term housing needs of our people can hardly be fully met, not to mention building a more spacious living environment. Among the many land supply options, the Lantau Tomorrow Vision is the largest in scale and could provide the greatest amount of land. The current funding application is for conducting studies on the artificial islands in the central waters, involving the reclamation of 1,000 hectares and the provision of related strategic transport infrastructure. Originated from the Enhancing Land Supply Strategy in 2011, the concept of reclamation in East Lantau has been explored and discussed by the community for almost a decade and should not be subject to further delay. If we all act in an objective and fair manner with the long-term interests of Hong Kong in mind, we will understand that reclamation for developing artificial islands in the central waters under the Lantau Tomorrow Vision has a number of advantages, including creating new land, instead of solely changing the use of existing land from one to another, increasing housing supply with a proportion of 70% for public housing, optimizing the transport network of Hong Kong as a whole, and relieving traffic congestion in the northwest new territories by linking up the roads and railways on the Hong Kong Island, North Lantau, and the coastal areas of Tuen Mun, developing a livable and carbon-neutral community, boosting the commercial development potential of North Lantau, and addressing environmental issues by absorbing local public fill instead of sending it to sites outside Hong Kong for reclamation. In terms of financing, this project is practicable and will bring enormous economic benefits to Hong Kong. Although we have already secured support from the Public Works Subcommittee of the LegCo for the study in May last year, funding approval has yet to be obtained. For the sake of Hong Kong's future, the current term government will not give up on the Lantau Tomorrow Vision and will strive for the early commencement of the relevant studies. I pledge that the government will continue to listen to the views of various sectors of the community and proactively explore new financing options for the project in the course of the studies. In addition to making all-out efforts to identify and produce land, we must also expedite the land development process, as a lack of policy coordination and a complicated and lengthy approval process will directly slow down the turning of primitive land into spade-ready sites and the completion of residential developments. Over the past 2 years or so, the Steering Group on Streamlining Development Control, which comprises the Development Bureau and the Planning Department, Lands Department and Buildings Department under its purview, has been focusing on the consolidation and rationalization of the standards and definitions adopted by the three departments in scrutinizing private development projects and helping to avoid multiple vetting. Having consulted the industry, the steering group has introduced 7 streamlined measures concerning building height restrictions, landscape requirements, site coverage of greenery, etc. Other measures such as GFA calculation will also be rolled out in the next few months. Land development does not involve only the approval process of these 3 departments, and development projects which require speeding up are not limited to those in the private sector. In fact, with a majority of government-led development projects being public housing projects, there is a greater need to compress the development schedule, lest it will be difficult to shorten the waiting time for PRH. As such, I have authorized the Secretary for Development to expand the composition and remit of the steering group to include vetting departments other than those under the Development Bureau, with a view to reviewing more comprehensively the development approval processes for both government and private projects and rationalizing the development-related requirements imposed by different bureaus, such as reviewing whether the technical assessment requirements are clear and suitable. I will personally steer the internal coordination to increase land supply to ensure that all the bureaus and departments concerned will take increasing and expediting housing supply as the foremost and priority objective and make their best endeavors to overcome all difficulties to achieve the objective in an innovative, bold and accountable manner. Building a livable city. There is no conflict between increasing land supply and building a quality living environment. In fact, with sufficient new land supply, we will be better placed to retain our country parks, preserve the natural and cultural heritages, and address the overcrowding problems in old urban areas. During my tenure as the Secretary for Development, I've strived to promote urban development by attaching importance to both development and conservation, so that Hong Kong people and visitors can enjoy the hustle and bustle of our city and harbour and stroll in the narrow streets of our old urban areas. A decade ago, the government implemented 2 major revitalization initiatives, conserving Central and energizing Kowloon East, using a district-based development model. To date, a number of historic building revitalization projects under conserving Shopping Central have been completed, including the Tai Kwun Center for Heritage and Arts, which received the Award of Excellence, the top honor in the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization Asia Pacific Awards for Cultural Heritage Conservation. The Energizing Kowloon East initiative has successfully transformed areas in Kwun Tong, Kowloon Bay and Kai Tak into the second core business district in Hong Kong. The commercial GFA in the districts has increased by 70% to 2.9 million square meters at present and will further increase to about 3.5 million square meters in 2 years, making it comparable in scale to the core business district in Central. In light of our past experience, we propose to implement the Invigorating Island South initiative to develop the Southern District into a place full of vibrancy, vigor and velocity for people to work, live, explore new ideas and have fun. In the past, owing to road and transport infrastructure constraints, there was no clear development positioning for the Southern District on Hong Kong Island. With the commissioning of the MTR South Island Line East in 2016, the connectivity of Wong Chuk Hang, Aberdeen and Ap Lei Chau with other districts has been enhanced. The beautiful natural landscapes, pleasant sea and land scenery, well-known attractions such as Ocean Park, 4 country parks, a number of beaches and a marine reserve, as well as rich historical and cultural resources, all underline the great potential of the Southern District. The Invigorating Island South initiative being contemplated includes the following key projects. 1. Formulating a proposal for the rebirth of Ocean Park with emphasis on enhancing and leveraging its strength in education and conservation, making use of its natural landscape, strategic seaside location, and the water world, which will open next summer to offer diversified entertainment, leisure, and travel experiences. 2. Revitalizing the Jumbo Floating Restaurant, which is a historic landmark in Hong Kong. The owner of the floating restaurant has recently agreed to donate it to Ocean Park at no cost. The government will facilitate the collaboration between Ocean Park and NGOs for the rebirth of the floating restaurant in the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter on a non-profit-making basis so that it will become a distinctive cultural heritage and tourist attraction in the Southern District. 3. Enhancing the cultural and leisure facilities in the vicinity of Aberdeen and Wong Chuk Hang, including the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter, Aberdeen Promenade and Ap Lei Chau Main Street, to enable members of the public and visitors to immerse in the ambience, history and culture of a fishing village and enjoy ecotourism in the area. 4. Exploring new marine tourism routes by taking advantage of the district's seaside location with Ocean Park as a core to link up with other districts and islands, as well as exploring the expansion of the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter area and the vessel berthing area, as well as providing more landing facilities along the coastal area. 5. Exploring the development of a water sports centre at the rehabilitated Chek O Quarry site under public-private partnership to provide advanced training facilities for athletes and water sports enthusiasts. 6. Expediting the redevelopment or conversion of old industrial buildings in Wong Chuk Hang through the government's policy of revitalizing industrial buildings so as to provide more operating space for emerging industries and the arts and culture sector. 7. Exploring room for redevelopment or consolidation of the existing government institution or community or GIC sites or facilities in districts so as to promote single-site multiple use. 8. Taking the opportunities brought by the large-scale topside development project at Wong Chuk Hang Station, which will commence population intake 2 years later, to beautify public space and cityscape through placemaking, as well as enhancing pedestrian connectivity of the Wong Chuk Hang business area and the waterfront area nearby, while improving the pedestrian improvement environment along Sherman Road and Po Chong Wan through minor works. By drawing on the successful experience gained from the Energizing Kowloon East initiative, we'll set up a multidisciplinary professional team under the Development Bureau to interact and collaborate with stakeholders, as well as coordinate and implement various projects under the Invigorating Island South initiative. In the 2018 policy address, I announced a number of initiatives to revitalize industrial buildings, among which the increase of the maximum permissible plot ratio by 20% for redevelopment of old industrial buildings was well received. The Town Planning Board has so far approved more than 30 applications, which may supply approximately 600,000 square meters of new floor space for commercial or industrial use. Landowners have also been approaching the Lands Department for lease modification. To expedite the work, the Development Bureau will introduce a pilot scheme for charging land premium at standard rates. The Development Bureau and the Lands Department are working out the details of the new scheme, which is targeted to be launched in early 2021. With the government's support, the URA has in recent years adopted a planning-led and district-based approach in taking forward urban renewal. This approach has the benefit of allowing redevelopment projects to go beyond demolition and reconstruction of individual single-block buildings by capitalizing on the opportunities brought by redevelopment to replan traffic routes, pedestrian facilities, as well as greening and leisure areas within the district, thereby creating a more people-oriented community and bringing greater benefits to residents. The Kwun Tong Town Centre project, which is the largest single redevelopment project ever undertaken by the URA, is progressing towards this direction. Upon completion of the 5 redevelopment zones in the coming few years, the Kwun Tong Town Centre will be given a brand new look. The URA will adopt the same urban renewal approach in enhancing old districts such as Kowloon City, To Kwa Wan, Yau Ma Tei, and Mong Kok. The government strives to push forward the implementation of transport infrastructure projects and provide reliable and affordable transport services to the public. We're implementing a number of new railway projects in a proactive manner. The MTRCL is embarking on the detailed planning and design of the Tung Chung Line extension and Tuen Mun South extension, while the government will press ahead with the Northern Link with a view to commencing the detailed planning and design work shortly. The MTRCL will also submit the South Island Line West project proposal to the government by the end of this year to tie in with the redevelopment of Wafu Estate and the Invigorating Island South initiative, after which relevant departments will study the proposal and implement the project in due course. In addition, the government will carry out a comprehensive traffic and transport strategy study, which includes surveying the latest travel patterns of the public, making reference to and introducing innovative transport modes and technologies as appropriate, with a view to enhancing our public transport services to meet the demand of the public, as well as deploying different transport resources more effectively to support sustainable development and facilitate the flow of people and goods in the GBA. Concurrently, we will conduct the strategic studies on railway and major roads beyond 2030 to explore the layout of railway and major road infrastructure and conduct preliminary engineering and technical assessments for their alignments and supporting facilities, so as to ensure that the planning of large-scale transport infrastructure will complement or even reserve capacity to meet the overall long-term land development needs of Hong Kong. To tie in with the further development of Energizing Kowloon East initiative, the government has largely completed the detailed feasibility study on the environmentally friendly linkage system EFLS for Kowloon East. The study studies implementing a multimodal EFLS in the district, which will be more effective and desirable than a standalone infrastructure. The proposed multimodal EFLS includes introducing new bus and green minibus routes in the area, developing travelators network linking up the former runway of High Tech, the Kowloon Bay Action Area, and the MTR Ngau Tok Kok Station, providing a greenway network running through the promenades and open spaces in the High Tech development area for shared use by pedestrians and cyclists, constructing an elevated landscape deck to connect the MTR Kwun Tong Station, and establishing a water taxi stand at the High Tech development area. The Development Bureau plans to release the details by the end of this year and gauge public views on the proposed multimodal EFLS. In view of the severe blow caused by the prolonged epidemic to the taxi trade, the current time government has decided to temporarily shelve the work relating to the introduction of franchised taxi services. Instead, greater efforts will be made to improve the quality of taxi service in conjunction with the trade, including leveraging technology and organizing commendation schemes, etc., so as to encourage taxi drivers and fleets to provide quality service for the public. In addition, the THB is preparing legislative amendments on increasing the penalties for illegal carriage of passengers for reward and other malpractices in relation to taxi service, respectively, to protect the interests of passengers. Apart from continuing to enhance our public transport infrastructure and services, the government has been striving to promote smart mobility for improving road efficiency. One of the key features is to alleviate the problem of insufficient public parking spaces through the application of technology. In this connection, the Transport Department is actively taking forward 6 pilot projects on automated parking systems, APS, and has invited tender for the first pilot project at Hoi Shing Road, Tsuen Wan, at the end of September. It is expected that the APS will be put into service next year. The government has been promoting walk in Hong Kong with a view to creating a pedestrian-friendly environment, thereby encouraging people to walk more. The government is actively promoting walkability in Kowloon East to improve pedestrian facilities in Kowloon Bay and Kwun Tong business areas, as well as promoting greening and beautification of streetscape. Meanwhile, we'll continue to improve the existing pedestrian linkage systems in various districts, such as Admiralty and Wan Chai North, including enhancing the system in the vicinity of Admiralty through redevelopment of the Hutchison House in Queensway Plaza, a government project to connect the Admiralty Centre with the Tamar footbridge, as well as pedestrian connection linking up Pacific Place with the footbridge network at the Harcourt Garden, and the facilitation scheme for provision of pedestrian links by the private sector. The past 3 years saw the completion of 5 kilometers of harbourfront promenade, making both sides of the Victoria Harbour a popular public space. Upon completion of 13 large-scale projects supported by a dedicated funding of $6.5 billion, the harbourfront promenade will be extended from the current 23 kilometers to 34 kilometers in 2028, and both sides of the harbourfront will also be provided with an additional 35 hectares of quality public space with district characteristics. The harbourfront projects to be commenced next year include the boardwalk underneath the Island Eastern Corridor measuring 2 kilometers long and 10 meters wide, connecting Causeway Bay and Quarry Bay, and the harbourfront park at Eastern Street North in Sang Pun. We strive to complete these 2 projects in phases starting 2024. Following the commissioning of the remaining cycle track section from Changshui to Yuen Long, the entire cycle track of about 60 kilometers connecting Eastern and Western New Territories from Mount Shan to Tuen Mun has been fully open for use since September. The 2-kilometer cycle track from Ching Chun Bridge to Bayview Garden in Tsuen Wan will be open for use early next year, and continued efforts will be made to take forward the construction works of the remaining track of about 20 kilometers of the Tsuen Wan to Tuen Mun section. As for the urban area, a 13-kilometer greenway for shared use by pedestrians and cyclists in the high-tech development area will be constructed in 2 phases. The first phase, 7.5 kilometers, is scheduled for completion in 2023, while the remaining 5.5 kilometers will be open for use after 2025. In addition, cycle track design will be incorporated into 13 major harbourfront development projects. We are committed to developing Hong Kong into a most cherished international metropolis through cultural and sports development. Blending local traditional characteristics with international elements, the West Kowloon Cultural District is becoming the new cultural landmark of Hong Kong. The 2 museums in the WKCD, the M+ Museum of Modern and Contemporary Visual Arts and the Hong Kong Palace Museum, showcasing invaluable Chinese artifacts, are scheduled for completion and commissioning in the next 2 years. Together with the Hong Kong Museum of Arts, which was reopened last year after expansion, the 3 museums will turn a new page in Hong Kong's visual arts landscape. Featured by distinctive collection and curatorial style, they would definitely offer a fruitful cultural journey to locals and visitors. When completed, the Kai Tak Sports Park will be the largest sports facility in Hong Kong. Based on the current works progress, it is expected to be completed in 2023. The government will foster the collaboration between the park's operator and the sports sector to fully utilize the state-of-the-art facilities of the park, so as to further promote sports in the community, support elite sports development, and making Hong Kong a hub for major sports events, while nurturing more sports talents for Hong Kong and enhancing their professional standards. Environment and conservation. In the past 3 years, Hong Kong has achieved good progress in areas such as improvement in air quality, nature conservation, development of renewable energy, energy saving and decarbonization, and construction of waste resources and sewage treatment infrastructures. To support green recovery, the Environment Bureau is adopting various new environmental protection measures, such as subsidizing existing private residential estates to install electric vehicle charging enabling infrastructure in car parks, expanding the recycling network in all 18 districts in Hong Kong, introducing the Green Tech Fund, etc. This will not only continuously improve the local environment, but will also create green employment and economic opportunities. It is expected that thousands of jobs will be created with these measures. In the coming year, the Environment Bureau plans to launch a long-term strategy blueprint on waste management and the Hong Kong's first roadmap on the popularization of electric vehicles, etc., with a target of ceasing the sale of conventional fuel-propelled private cars, as well as updating a clean air plan for Hong Kong. Over the last decade, the government has allocated $47 billion to implement various energy-saving and renewable energy measures, promoting electric vehicles and vessels, and introduce innovative waste-to-energy and waste-to-resources facilities to help reduce waste and carbon emissions. In their last and current development plan spanning 10 years, the investment of the two power companies in major decarbonization projects amounts to some $39 billion. As set out in the Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan 2030+, we are moving towards its 2030 target of reducing carbon intensity by 65 to 70% as compared with that in the baseline year of 2005. In fact, Hong Kong's carbon emissions reached its peak in 2014 at a per capita carbon emission of 6.2 tons. It was reduced to 5.4 tons in 2018, which is about 36% lower than that in the baseline year of 2005. The community in general expects Hong Kong to go further in deep decarbonization. Combating climate change is an important issue across the globe. In his speech delivered to the United Nations earlier on, President Xi Jinping made it clear that China would endeavor to achieve the peak of carbon emissions in 2030 and carbon neutrality before 2060. This is an important commitment made by our country in combating climate change and is well received by governments and international environmental groups around the world. In Hong Kong, the Council for Sustainable Development just submitted a report to the government on long-term decarbonization strategy. I now announce that the Hong Kong SAR will strive to achieve carbon neutrality before 2050. To this end, the government will update the Hong Kong's Climate Action Plan in the middle of next year to set out more proactive strategies and measures to reduce carbon emissions. We will examine various means to reduce carbon emissions, which include exploring different types of zero-carbon energy and decarbonization technology, enhancing the energy efficiency of both new and existing buildings, promoting zero-carbon vehicles and green transportation, and building large-scale waste-to-energy facilities. To lower the cost of achieving carbon neutrality, we need to reduce the demand for energy through ways, such as introducing more stringent energy efficiency standards. We also need to enlist the full support of various sectors to adopt low-carbon lifestyles and economic transformation. We will develop green finance to boost investment conducive to reducing carbon emissions, build a low-carbon economy which is more resilient to climate change, and enhance public education and publicity. I cordially invite all sectors to work together to promote low-carbon transformation in Hong Kong in a bid to strive towards the goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. Well, notwithstanding our achievement in decarbonization, waste reduction remains a major challenge for Hong Kong. The government introduced the Waste Disposal Charging for Municipal Solid Waste Amendment Bill 2018 into LegCo 2 years ago. Waste reduction is a global trend and is conducive to mitigating climate change. Municipal solid waste charging, as the main driving force behind waste reduction, will not only drive enterprises and the public to practice waste reduction and recycling, but also facilitate the sustainable development of related industries and the creation of green job opportunities when the quality and quantity of recyclables collected is enhanced. I welcome the decision of LegCo House Committee to form a Bills Committee again to study the bill in this legislative year, and hope that the bill can be passed as early as possible. The Environmental Protection Department has progressively launched complementary measures to promote waste reduction and recycling. The government is adopting a multi-pronged approach to diversify outlets for local waste paper, including implementation of a waste paper collection and recycling services program, and plan to tender for the development of a modern pulping facility in Eco Park, Tuen Mun. The latest waste paper pulping technology has the benefits of higher efficiency and land use and greater reduction in energy consumption and operating costs, and pulp products are generally not subject to import restrictions. Therefore, it will suit the local situation better and transform waste to resources more effectively. We expect to invite tenders in the first half of 2021, and the pulping facility is expected to commence operation by 2024.
The current term government is committed to building a caring community and looking after the underprivileged, as can be seen in the allocation of resources. Recurrent government expenditures on social welfare and healthcare have increased, from $65.3 billion and $62.2 billion in 2017-18 to $93.9 billion and $87.1 billion in 2020-21 respectively, with an average annual increase of 12.9% and 11.6%. Apart from the recurrent expenditure, we've also increased the non-recurrent funding provision of additional facilities, which include an additional funding of $300 billion for the development of public health care facilities and healthcare teaching facilities, as well as $20 billion for the purchase of private premises for welfare purposes. In January this year, I put forward a series of initiatives to improve people's livelihood. Although the COVID-19 epidemic has brought drastic changes to our economy and public finances, the government will take forward initiatives in a prudent manner. Among them, the study on tenancy control and preparation for the cash allowance trial scheme, both related to the housing of low-income families, already commenced. The proposal to increase the number of statutory holidays to bring in on par with that of general holidays has formally entered the discussion stage at the Labour Advisory Board. I only hope that an implementation plan acceptable to both employees and employers can be agreed. In order to conclude this controversial labour welfare issue, which has lingered on for years, so that we may strive to introduce an enabling bill into the electrical for scrutiny within the term of the current government. As for the $2 transport fare concession scheme, which has recently drawn much public attention, the government has largely completed the internal assessment, and the premise of being able to combat and prevent abuse effectively will include the required funding in the 2021-22 budget with a view to progressively implementing within that financial year. Apart from purchasing private premises for welfare purposes, I consider that providing social welfare facilities in future public housing projects is a practical and feasible option. I invite the HKHA and HKHS to work with the Development Bureau to explore increasing the plot ratio of future public housing projects so that about 5% of the gross floor area can be set aside for the provision of social welfare facilities. It is fully acknowledged that in view of the tight housing supply, this proposal should not affect the original flat production of the projects. Affected by the global and local epidemic, Hong Kong's labour market has come under immense pressure. To help workers find a way out of their predicament, the government has to make every effort to restore the economy, create more jobs, increase training and retraining opportunities, step up manpower measures, and enhance the safety net of the social welfare system. Under the second round of the AEF, we launched a job creation scheme whereby a total of 30,000 time-limited job opportunities will be created for people with some different academic qualifications and skill sets. So far, about 20,000 jobs have been created in the public and private sectors, of which over 10,000 have been filled. I noticed that the schemes for industries with more promising prospects are particularly popular. For example, the Financial Services Development Council has received an allocation of $180 million to launch the Financial Industry Recruitment Scheme for Tomorrow First, under which a monthly government subsidy of $10,000 will be provided to employers for each job quota, and nearly all the 1,500 quotas have been successfully taken up by eligible financial service companies within 3 weeks upon the launch of the scheme. In view of this, the government adopted the following measures to create more sector-specific job opportunities which are particularly suitable for young people graduating in recent years. Green industry will invest in a series of environmental projects in the next few years, creating an estimated 4,000 job opportunities in sectors such as specific scientific research, architecture and engineering, recycling and transport, construction industry. In addition to the planned large-scale projects, have requested various work departments to press ahead with renovation, repair and maintenance works for various government buildings and facilities, and to expedite the refurbishment and minor improvement works of public markets. The HKHA will also allocate additional resources to improve the environmental and communal facilities of public housing estates. I&T industry, we need more technology talents for the development of I&T in Hong Kong. However, in the short term, most of the positions for new entrants are offered by major technology companies in mainland cities of GBA, and the government will provide wage subsidies for Hong Kong technology companies to hire employees to work and gain experience in the mainland cities of GBA. Property management industry. The government is collaborating with large property management companies and will subsidize them to employ more young people who are interested in pursuing the career in property management, which will also help enhance the professionalism and attractiveness of the industry. Creative industries. The government will make good use of various funds which support the development of films, design, culture, as well as arts tech. This will also consider promoting wage subsidies to attract more newcomers who aspire to pursue a career in the creative industries and legal profession. As an international legal Legal Cup and Center for Dispute Resolution Services, coupled with the recent implementation of liberalization measures for legal professional services in GBA, there is a need for Hong Kong to nurture more legal talents. Upon discussion with the Employees Retraining Board, the government will further enhance the support to employees affected by the economic downturn. Immediately after the completion of the second tranche of the Love Upgrading Special Scheme at the end of this year, the ERB will launch the third tranche of the scheme in January next year, which will last for 6 months until mid-2021, and the new tranche will double the 10,000 training places under the second tranche, enabling 20,000 trainees to receive retraining and allowance during the training period. The scheme does not impose any academic qualification requirements on trainees and encourages them to participate in cross-industry training with the aim of assisting them to rejoin the employment market as early as possible. While the unemployment rate remains high, some sectors are facing staff shortages. As such, the LD will set up its efforts to enhance matching between employers and people seeking employment, strengthen its liaison with employers with recruitment needs, and organize more thematic job fairs to help job seekers secure employment. At the same time, we will also encourage employers to sectors that face persistent manpower shortages, including those of the care sector, to participate in the ERB's first hire then train scheme. In view of the tight manpower situation of frontline care staff in residential care homes for the elderly, will consider adjusting the training and working hour arrangements under the scheme to attract people to join the sector. We'll also make arrangements for employers to join LD's employment program for the elderly and middle-aged so that they can apply for on-the-job training allowance. The CSSA scheme put in place by the government has all along served its function as a safety net effectively. With the local unemployment rates continuing to rise since late 2019, the number of CSSA employment cases has increased accordingly. In the past 12 months, as at late October this year, the total number of CSSA unemployment cases has recorded a nearly 55% increase, which shows that the CSSA scheme is generally regarded as a safety net by the unemployed during the epidemic and economic downturn. To assist more unemployed persons and their families, the government has launched the special scheme of assistance to the unemployed under the CSSA scheme on 1st of June this year for a period of 1 year to temporarily relax the exit limits for able-bodied applicants or recipients by 100%. To further support the unemployed upon completion of the necessary adjustment to the CSSA system, will implement a new arrangement under which the total cash value of insurance policies of able-bodied CSSA recipients or applicants will be disregarded as assets for a period of 1 year so that more unemployed persons can receive assistance to tide over their economic difficulties. To alleviate the public's burden of transport expenses during the pandemic, the government has earlier introduced a special temporary measure to temporarily relax the monthly public transport expenses threshold under the public transport fare subsidy scheme from $400 to $200 between July and December this year. I've decided to extend the measure for 6 months. In other words, from 1st of January to the 30th of June next year, the government will continue to provide subsidy amounting to 1/3 of the monthly public transport expenses in excess of $200, subject to a maximum of $400 per month. It is estimated that around 3.8 million people will benefit per month. Furthermore, after discussion with the government, the MTRCL has decided to extend the 20% fare discount, which is supposed to cease at the end of this year, for 3 months until March 2021. To support individuals and families with difficulties coping with their daily food expenditure, the SWD launched the short-term food assistance service projects since February 2009. The STFASPs serve to supplement other poverty alleviation measures and help the underprivileged tide over their difficult period. The government will make this service a permanent one from August 2021 upon completion of the existing service contracts and has earmarked $450 million to meet its recurring expenditure. To enhance the support for persons with disabilities and their carers, apart from continuing to take forward various rehabilitation programs under the Persons with Disabilities and Rehabilitation Program Plan, we'll implement additional measures in the coming year to further relieve the stress of carers, including providing additional residential respite places through the Board Place scheme for private residential care homes for persons with disabilities, providing residential respite service in boarding sectors of special schools with vacant boarding places, and arranging severely mentally handicapped persons in need of pairing day activity center services to receive services at the hostel subject to the availability of sufficient space. Meanwhile, the Labour and Welfare Bureau is conducting an in-depth study with a view to providing an evidence-based basis of formulating a comprehensive carer policy in the relevant pilot schemes. The Quantum government attaches great importance to primary healthcare development. The first district health center in Kwai Ting came into operation in September last year. Operation Surface contracts for DHCs of another 2 districts were awarded, and the sites for 9 other DHCs have been confirmed. The Food and Healthcare Bureau will look into implementation of a pilot private sector program for DHCs, under which subsidized medical consultation services will be provided to HC members who are newly diagnosed with diabetes or hypertension, with a view to enhancing the measures to manage the chronic disease and alleviating the pressure on the public healthcare system. The Elderly Dental Assistance Program under the CCF benefits over 500,000 low-income elderly persons aged 65 or above. We plan to expand the scope of subsidies so that eligible elderly persons in need of treatment can receive more targeted dental services, and allowing the inclusion of more subsidized items, including the removal of bridges or crowns and provision of root canal treatment, and allowing elderly persons reaching the age of 75 who have joined the program for at least 5 years to receive free removable dentures and other related dental services for a second time. The social unrest last year, together with the persisting COVID-19 epidemic since early this year, have brought different levels of impact and influence on the mental well-being of some people. The government has decided to provide additional resources of $300 million under the Beat Drugs Fund to better support the needy in the community and raise public awareness of mental health. The government and the HA introduced enhancement measures for the means test mechanism of the Samaritan Fund and CCF medical assistance programs in early 2019 to alleviate the financial burden of patients' families arising from drug expenses. We'll further refine the mechanism after reviewing the effectiveness of the measures. At present, the Samaritan Fund and CCF medical assistance programs cover 48 and 34 drugs respectively. We'll continue to increase the number of drugs covered under the 2 funds and relax the clinical criteria of existing drugs in accordance with the established mechanism, thereby strengthening the support for the needs of patients with cancers and uncommon diseases. The government has all along been fostering the social integration of ethnic minorities. In the past 2 years, we have implemented around 30 measures to support ethnic minorities, covering areas of education, employment, social welfare, healthcare, and social inclusion. Among these measures, the amended Race Discrimination Ordinance, which enhances the protection for ethnic minorities, also came into effect this June. In addition, outreaching teams have been set up by the SWT to proactively reach out to ethnic minorities with welfare needs. Starting from the second quarter of 2021, the Hong Kong Observatory will provide basic weather information on its website in 8 ethnic minority languages. This will facilitate ethnic minorities' real-time access of information such as latest weather reports, warning and forecasts, as well as tropical cyclone tracks presented in their own languages. I will continue to encourage more departments to review their delivery of daily public services and actively consider meeting the needs of ethnic minorities. Nurturing talents and youth development. Education is the key to nurturing talents. My vision for education is to nurture our young people into quality citizens with a sense of social responsibility, a national identity, and affection for Hong Kong, as well as an international perspective. Education is also about building a good character, and the cultivation of moral virtues is the most essential. As a matter of fact, students must be law-abiding, able to respect different opinions, and adapt to social life in order to become a responsible member of the civil society. After my resumption of office, I've been actively providing additional resources for the education sector in order to create favorable conditions for implementing reforms necessary for enhancing the quality of education. Over the past 3 years, the current term government has increased the recurrent expenditure in education by a total of $15.5 billion. Many of these measures are meeting the long-standing aspirations of practitioners from the education sector, including implementing the all-graduate teaching force policy and increasing the class-to-teacher ratio. Moreover, I would like to stress that the role of the government in education is not merely a provider of resources, but also a policymaker, administrator, and regulator. To enhance the quality of education, we have set up 8 task forces at different times and invited professionals to conduct studies and consultations and to present the reports to the government. 7 task forces have completed the work, and the EDB has joined hands with the relevant organizations to implement the task force recommendations. The last task force on review of school curriculum submitted its report in September, and the EDB will provide the government's response in due course. Besides, the 39 new initiatives announced since July 2017 have been completed or are progressing on schedule, and the progress has been set out in this year's policy address supplement. Nevertheless, the social incidents last year led many to question again the effectiveness of Hong Kong's education. It is indeed heartbreaking that among more than 10,000 1,000 arrestees suspected of violating the law in connection with the opposition to the proposed legislative amendments to the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance. 40% are students, of which nearly 2,000 are primary and secondary students. We cannot bear to see that with the infiltration of politics into school campuses, students are drawn into political turbulence or even misled to engage in illegal and violent acts for which have to take legal responsibilities which impact on their lives. These social incidents also reveal that the law-abiding awareness of some young people is weak and that positive values such as mutual understanding and mutual respect are lacking. In the face of the complicated political environment in Hong Kong, the proliferation of misinformation in social media, it is the shared responsibility of the government, social education sector and parents to find a way to protect our students. Among the 5 domains of moral, intellectual, physical, social, and aesthetic developments, moral development is regarded as the most important one at the foundation of education. In fact, deepening students' understanding of the history, culture, and developments of our country and strengthening education on the Constitution and the Basic Law are the fundamentals of fostering their sense of national identity and awareness of national security. The current term government has made Chinese history an independent compulsory subject at the junior secondary level, and the new curriculum of the subjects has been rolled out progressively from S1 in the current school year. The EDB will provide opportunities for students to join study tours to integrate with the curriculum and encourage primary and secondary students to learn more about the essence of Chinese culture for nurturing the moral character and cultural identity. Moreover, EDB will, through diversified activities, cultivate primary and secondary students' comprehensive understanding of the nation's development, the Constitution, the Basic Law, the implementation of one country, two systems, and the importance of national security, and teach them to respect and preserve and persevere the dignity of the national flag and the national anthem as symbols of our country, to foster positive values among students as well as development in them, a sense of identity, belonging, and responsibility towards the nation, the Chinese race, and our society. There has been ongoing controversy over the subject of liberal studies under the senior secondary curriculum in society. Hence, the direction of reform in future should focus on rectifying the previous deviation from the subject's objectives and restating it as the platform to help students establish a sound foundation of knowledge, make connection between the knowledge across different subjects, develop critical thinking skills, analyze contemporary issues in a rational manner, and learn about the development of our nation, the Constitution, the Basic Law, and the rule of law, and so forth. The reform of curriculum should tie in with the work of examination and assessment. In the previous school year, a round question in the Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education Examinations generated heated discussions in the community. I expect that the Hong Kong Examinations and Assessment Authority will improve its question moderation mechanism continuously to prevent recurrence of similar problems. In line with the goals of promoting whole person development and catering for student diversity, will further promote applied learning as a secondary senior selective subject and provide students with subsidies and more diversified courses to broaden their studies and learn experience to facilitate their diversified development. Although face-to-face classes in schools were temporarily suspended due to the COVID-19 epidemic, students were still able to learn during the class expansion with the concerted efforts of the EDB in schools by flexibly using different innovative means. To further support schools and teachers in implementing this blended mode of teaching and learning, the EDB will set aside $2 billion in the Quality Education Fund to launch a 3-year program. This will, on the one hand, support the provision of ancillary facilities for e-learning, such as setting up a platform for sharing learning and teaching resources, as well as encouraging the sharing of quality teaching material by students. On the other hand, ensure that all students will have equal opportunities in accessing e-learning, including through subsidizing schools to purchase mobile computer devices for loan to needy students and to provide Wi-Fi routers and mobile data cards for students who do not have access to appropriate internet services because of the living environment. To cater for the immediate needs of students from disadvantaged families, the EBD also provided a one-off top-up grant for supporting online learning of financially needy students to public sector schools early this month. Students have far-reaching influence on the whole person development of students and play a vital role in passing on knowledge and nurturing students' character. I hope that they will nurture students into persons of great ability and integrity who will also become the pillars of our society in safeguarding one country, two systems. As the authority responsible for the registration of students, the government will enhance the quality of teachers through measures in respect of entry to the profession, training and management. Will discuss with teacher education institutions in ensuring the ethics, character and conduct of teachers. Will also strengthen the training of teachers and principals upon appointment, during the service and before the promotion. The government will take stringent actions against teachers who are incompetent or found misconducted, including cancelling the registration of those who are found seriously misconducted for the well-being of students. The on-site preschool rehabilitation services, a new type of cross-disciplinary and cross-bureau services, aim to support students with special education needs to help them grow healthily by early identification and immediate intervention. As the pilot project has proved the services effective, the OPRS were regularized in October 2018 in the current school year. The service places have been increased substantially from 3,000 to 8,000 and will be further increased to 10,000 in the year 2022-23, with the aim of achieving zero waiting time. To provide earlier support to children waiting assessment by the Child Assessment Centers under the Department of Health and those assessed as having only mild developmental programs, we have launched a 20-month pilot scheme for kindergartens participating in the OPRS this school year. The Hong Kong Academy of Performing Arts is the only higher education institution in Hong Kong that provides education and training in the performing arts and related technical arts. In the QS World University Rankings for Performing Arts 2020, the Hong Kong APA continued to rank first in Asia and 7th globally. The government supports the provision of new teaching facilities in the student hostel for the HKAPA in the Eastern District on Hong Kong Island to enrich teaching and learning infrastructure and experience and to foster the healthy development of tertiary education in the performing arts. To expand the talent pool of Hong Kong, not only do we need to make our best endeavor to nurture local talents, we also need to proactively attract non-local talents to come to Hong Kong. Invest Hong Kong work in partnership with various bureaus, CTOs, and organizations promoting INT, financial and cultural development to adopt a strategic approach in actively promoting around the world the facilitation measures and development opportunities available in Hong Kong for high-quality talents with the focus on attracting those in demand in various areas. As a diverse group, young people have different goals for their life. In my 2017 policy address, I proposed 3 directions of our youth development, namely addressing young people's concerns about education, career pursuits, and home ownership, and encouraging their participation in politics as well as public policy discussion and debate. Considerable progress has been made. However, the social unrest, unstable epidemic situation, and prolonged class expansion over the past year have affected the lives and learning patterns of young people. Some feel confused and helpless about their future and the way society is developing. In view of these situations, the government will consider how to create an environment that enables young people to grow healthily, build a stable home, pursue a good career, and unleash their full potential. We also hope that our young people can set their sights on our country, seizing the opportunities to study, work, and live in the GBA so as to broaden the scope for realizing their dreams. Taking into account Hong Kong's economy and market scale, the youth unemployment rate may remain a double-digit for some time. On the other hand, with a population of 70 million and huge development potential, the GBA can provide career development opportunities for young people. During the policy address consultation exercise this year, many enterprises indicated that with subsidy from the government, they could afford job opportunities to young people of Hong Kong and the GBA with vibrant economic growth. To encourage and support young people to work and pursue their career in the mainland cities of the GBA, the Hong Kong self-government will launch the GBA Youth Employment Scheme to encourage enterprises with operation in both Hong Kong and the GBA to recruit and deploy local university graduates to work in the mainland cities of the GBA. The scheme will provide 2,000 places, of which some are INT positions, as I've mentioned earlier. Furthermore, more and more young people wish to demonstrate their ability by starting their own businesses and finding an alternative path to working in traditional sectors. Last year, the Youth Development Commission introduced a new funding scheme for youth entrepreneurship in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area under the Youth Development Fund to render better entrepreneurial support and incubation services to Hong Kong young people who intend to start their businesses in Hong Kong and the mainland cities of the GBA and to further address their initial capital needs. Once the epidemic situation has become stable and cross-border travel resumed, the Home Affairs Bureau will launch a scheme to subsidize over 10 NGOs to implement youth entrepreneurship projects. It is estimated about $100 million will be provided for nearly 200 youth startups and supporting services to about 4,000 young people. Guangdong and the mainland cities of GBA have agreed to support the scheme by providing co-working bases and letting Hong Kong people enjoy the same treatment and support as their peers on the mainland. In addition, the Hong Kong government established the Alliance of Hong Kong Youth Innovative and Entrepreneurial Bases in the Greater Bay Area to serve as a one-stop information, publicity, and exchange platform to further support innovation and entrepreneurship by Hong Kong youth and the GBA. To provide more opportunities for young people to participate in policy discussions and understand government operation, we have regularized the member self-recommendation scheme for youth launched by the current term government and expanded it to cover more boards and committees. Young people aged between 18 and 35 may self-nominate to become members of specified government advisory committees through the scheme. So far, around 340 posts are currently held by young people who have been appointed directly or indirectly to the advisory and statutory bodies through the scheme. The overall ratio of appointed youth members in advisory and statutory bodies have increased from 7.8% in 2017 to 30% at present, gradually approaching the target of 15% set by the current term government. Closing remarks. Building on our steadfast determination to implement one country, two system, Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong a high degree of autonomy and capitalizing Hong Kong's traditional strength as opportunities for integration into the overall national development, this some 24,000-word policy address manifests the central government's staunch support for the Hong Kong SL and embraces my determination to strive for the best for Hong Kong with my team. As long as we stay true to our aspiration in implementing one country, two systems, safeguard national sovereignty, security and development interests, maintain our confidence in Hong Kong, refrain from politicizing matters, maintain communication in a rational manner and seek common ground while putting aside difficult differences, will surely be able to deal with the problems that arise in the course of implementing one country, two systems and address some deep-seated conflicts in Hong Kong. I made some sentimental remarks at the reception in celebration of the 23rd anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong SL on the 1st of July this year. I said, I faced the toughest challenge in my 40 years of public service in the past year. Not only have I faced unprecedented personal attacks, I'm also deeply worried about the future of Hong Kong. However, I'm extremely grateful to the central government for its trust in me, to my family and close friends for their unreserved love, and to colleagues at all levels for their staunch support. Their care and concern have given me hope that there will be an end to the difficult times and the rainbow will emerge after the storm. In the coming year, the Hong Kong self-government will double its efforts to put the epidemic under control, revive the economy, restore social order, rebuild Hong Kong's international reputation and people's confidence in government with a view to relaunching Hong Kong. Thank you. The Chief Executive has delivered the policy address to the Council and now leaves the chamber. Members, please stand up.